So next week I hear the Hydro Collider in Europe is going to try to manifest a miniature black hole.
So you're saying wheels don't matter anymore?
They're saying that if they're successful, they actually think they could possibly make
Swallow the
contact with the first parallel universe.
Sounds interesting.
2020. It wouldn't surprise me a bit.
Yeah, it's not the year to do it. Not the year to do it.
Well, I'm excited to see what next week brings then, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
It should be interesting, no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of stuff going on. All right. We're almost to the bottom, but okay. There we go. Got all the sharing done. Okay. So, may as well get the show started. So tonight we've got Doug Sagers in the studio. He is the sitting representative for 21, House Representative for District 21, and he is running to stay in that office, and so we're going to interview him. First, we'll start off with our intro. All right. So, well, Doug, thanks for coming out and joining us. And
thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. We're happy to have you for sure. So, how long have you been in the House?
10 years.
10 years.
Right.
And you were mayor?
I was mayor of Tooele for 8 years, back from 74 to 82.
74 to 82. So that's when I was just starting out in life.
Was that a full-time position?
It was.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Tooele has what they call a strong mayor form of government. It's done through a city charter. I believe that occurred in 1968 was when they changed forms of government. Prior to that, they had a city manager form, and it didn't work. People voted to change it to a strong mayor form of government, where the mayor is the executive, the council's legislative, and the courts are judicial.
Has it worked out pretty well so far?
I think so, yes.
How long was you after mayor before you ran for the House?
Oh, geez. I ran for the House in 10 years. 2010.
Okay.
So it was a lot of years.
Okay. So you said 83? Or
I left office in 82.
82.
I took office when I was 24.
Okay.
Left when I was 32. Went into investment banking for a number of years. Worked for a large New York-based investment banking firm. The travel got to be just onerous.
Mm-hmm.
Never saw my family, so I left that and took some other career opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But then you felt the calling to go and represent the state some more, and
I did. I'll be honest, it was a reluctant calling. You know, the 8 years of mayor I enjoyed. I think I was very successful. I probably could have served a third term, but I was burned out.
Yeah.
I knew that 6 years in. I was burned out. It was ironic. It seemed like we kept addressing the same issues over and over and over again. Those new council people who arrived, they said, well, what about this? It might be water, it might be roads, any number of different issues that they thought were important. They said, well, we've already addressed that on different levels. And politics can take a toll.
Mm.
There were some funny things that happened. When I first took office, the southern bench, had a water shortage. We were building a water line over the mountain and a tank up on top that's still there. And Skyline Drive was without water for about 2 weeks. We had a couple of wells go out. It was just a disaster. I'm in my office one day, and my wife calls and says, Doug, she's in tears, says, what? Says, there's a guy here in a towel. I think he's naked. Says, I came to shower. What should I do? I said, close the door.
So he felt it was your personal responsibility. They were out of water, so he was going to use your shower.
This was very early in my term. I mean, it was just, there are a couple I feel really badly about. One night at 3 o'clock in the morning, the phone rings, and I hear, did you know it's raining? Just a minute. Let me look. Get out of bed. I got the one that says, yes, it's raining. What are you going to do about it? And I'm going, give me a break. They said, I'm not God, and slammed down the phone. A minute later, the phone rings again and says, hello? Mayor, I am sorry, but my basement's being flooded. Can you help me? So I got dressed, went up and helped divert the water, called my crews out, and apologized for the lady for being so ignorant. But I said, I get so many different strange calls at night that just, I thought you were being facetious. And she was grateful. And, city employees have a tough job.
Yeah. Oh, I'm
I
sure they
believe
do. Well, when people get after you for the rain.
Well, that was fun. Another time, the phone rings late at night, and just a minute, you're, "Arf, arf, 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 arf." Hear that? Yeah, it's a dog barking. Well, you need to fix it. What's your address? I can't give you my address. My neighbors know I called you. Can you tell me what street you're on? No. What part of town you in? You figure it out. I said, look, sir, I'm not going to get up and drive all over town at 3 o'clock in the morning looking for a barking dog. I'll probably find the wrong one and make somebody else angry.
End up with.
So there are a lot of different funny things that happened that, then there was, when I first was elected, it was interesting. I was 24, and some of the councilmen, one was my principal in high school, and they were all older, in their 50s, 60s. And first formal meeting they had, they took a bet. This is a public meeting. They're up along the dais. I'm at the table down below. I said, you want to bet how long before we can run out of office? Going, what? And so they took a bet. The longest time was 30 days.
They were trying to run you out of office, so they laid a bet on it, and they all lost.
In a public meeting.
Oh.
And so thereafter, about 3 months, you couldn't buy a ticket to City Hall to get into the meetings. It was packed. It was so bizarre. There was one group that would go over to the Elks Lodge, have a bunch of drinks, and then come over and watch. And we ended up having a police presence there for a couple of months to keep people in line and the debates focused. But it was an interesting time.
Sounds a lot different.
It
Yeah.
definitely was.
I mean, things get heated today when you go into the county meetings and things like that, no doubt. But having a bet put on you. Well, I'm glad you won.
Well, thank you. It was an interesting election. It was
Yeah.
a pothole election, ironically. Main Street, you couldn't drive down Main Street without blowing a tire, and people are saying, hey, we need a change. There were 8 candidates, and I finished first in the primary and then won the election. And quite frankly, the night of the election, we're at my home, and my family's there, and said, well, why don't you call and see how you did? I said, I don't want to know. And so finally my sister calls, and she's kind of I don't know, your big sister. I'll let it go at that.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Really? He says, you won. And I used an expletive, like BS. He says, that's not funny, Janet. He says, no, you won. You need to go down there and see. I'm going, I'm not going to go down there. So my dad calls a little while later and says, Doug, you won. We need to go down. I remember walking across the parking lot behind the old City Hall. It was dark. And there was just a kind of a porch light over the back door. When I'm walking here, hey, Mayor. I'm looking for the mayor. And it turned out to be me. But that started it. And while I was mayor, I worked on Senator Jake Garn's campaign, worked on Orrin Hatch's campaign, and later worked on Reagan's campaign. And I thought, politics is pretty interesting. But after 8 years, I thought, I'm done. Never again.
And then
Here you are.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was convinced I was done, and then a number of years ago, about 15 years ago, I kept having this feeling, you need to run for office again. I kept saying, hey, I paid my dues. I spent 8 years. I did a good job. I feel good about what we accomplished, and I'm just done. That feeling kept getting stronger and stronger over the next couple of years, and finally I said, okay, I'll do it. I felt really awkward because Jim Gowns was a dear friend. He was a Senate representative. He'd been there for, I think, 18 years at the time. He taught me in grade school. He's a super good guy. I went to the Capitol to meet with him. I said, Jim, I'm going to run for your seat. He says, well, why, Doug? And I said, honestly, I have no idea. I said, it's something I feel I need to do. I've had this feeling for about 4 years. And I just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger. He says, well, that sounds pretty dumb. If you want to wait 2 years, I'll support you. I want to go 2 more years, and I'm going to be done, and I'll support you for the office. I said, Jim, I'm sorry. I can't wait any longer, and we're still good friends. He's a good man. I have tremendous respect for him.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you won because you offered like a particularly better product to the population, or was it just?
I think it was a combination of things. Jim was a little older than, well, age was part of it, and I think I ran a fairly, aggressive campaign. It was cordial. We had a debate that went very well, and I don't know if I'd win or not. I really didn't. Put up signs and one of the things you do, knocked on doors and TV ads and things, or not TV, but newspaper ads. And I won. And I almost felt bad because I had so much respect for Jim. And it was interesting. After my first year, I thought, this is not going to work. The process is so complex and so different than what you're used to in normal government or even in life. A lot of archaic rules and processes and procedures you have to follow if you're going to speak or, pass legislation, whatever else. And I was lucky. The Speaker of the House at the time, her name was Becky Lockhart. She was running when I was, at the same time, she was running for Speaker when I was running for election. And I supported the other guy. And he lost and she won. And for some reason, she took me under her arm as a protege. And she had a tremendous influence on my life and my ability to advance in the legislature. After my first term, I was appointed to a vice chairmanship of a committee, which was unheard of. And accomplished quite a bit. Felt really good about things. We funded the Tooele ATC at the time, a $10 million appropriation with $5 million from the city. That was a big thing. My biggest disappointment at that time was every 10 years you appropriate for a Senate seat. And we were arguing that Tooele was big enough to have our own Senate seat. We've had it for a number of years. We lost it about 10 years prior to that. And we thought we had it. In fact, up until on the last day of session, you have to adjourn at midnight, period. No matter what you do, you just stop. It's just done. And at about 10:30 that night, the Senate told me that we're going to sacrifice a seat in Tooele for a win in Salt Lake for a Democrat. And that was into that hope.
So did they do that just to gain more Democrat strength in the House? Or
it was a concession to the Democratic Party.
A give and take policy.
Hold the mic pull the microphone up just a little bit closer.
Sorry.
Oh, that's good.
It was a give and take. And I was really disappointed. That's coming up again next year. Mm-hmm. Once the census is done, there'll be a committee that'll be put together to talk about redistricting. And then it'll become kind of a tug-of-war. And basically, who has the most power, the most clout, and the most respect to get it done. Mm. We came so close that last time. I've been, I guess, upset for lack of a better word ever since. Our current senator is a great guy, but he lives up in Tremont. Mm-hmm. And they say, well, you're contiguous. Well, that may be, but you can't drive across the Great Salt Lake.
Yeah.
It takes him 3 hours to get down here and 3 hours to go back for a small portion of his district. And that's just wrong. I've asked the Speaker if I'm reelected to be on that committee that makes that determination. And I have enough ability to lobby with the other legislators. I believe this time around we will get that Senate seat.
Okay.
And there's 26 senators and 75 reps. And so a senator has more influence than a rep does by a 3-to-1 ratio. Mm-hmm. So I think that's important. But anyway, that just was something that just really left me upset. My second year, driving home, when we adjourned, There's a lot of cleanup work to do. So about 3:30 in the morning, I'm driving up the Capitol, driving home, and thinking, I am done. This is the worst thing I've ever done. I hate it. Get out by Black Rock and just had to say, you're not done, which was disappointing. And so I reluctantly ran again. And again, the speaker took me to wing and helped me develop relationships, how to navigate the system, and gave me an opportunity to serve in leadership, which I'm grateful for. And unfortunately, she developed a very rare brain disease, and she passed away when she was 46.
Oh, that's so young.
Really a dynamic lady, an incredible lady. She was a nurse. You know, nurses, they're just black and white. They'll tell you just how it is, and if you don't like it, that's too bad. But that was really a blow when she passed away. It was so unexpected. It happened so quickly. And anyway, Greg Hughes was elected speaker for 4 years. And again, we worked well together and gave me some good positions. I was chairman of the House Ethics Committee for 4 years, which is basically the judge if someone, for lack of a better word, screws up and they violate House rules or whatever that affects the House. I serve as a judge, and there's 5 other representatives that serve as a jury. And we deal with those issues. It may be sexual harassment, it may be something else. But
So without laying any names down, was you busy in that job, or? Oh, yeah, that's the concern.
Yeah, it was busy. And you know, it's hard to. Well, it wasn't hard. Some people did something so stupid, just go, you know, what were you thinking about? And then, you know, you went through the process and meted out the appropriate punishment, for lack of a better word. And then I was also vice chairman of what they call the Revenue and Taxation Committee at that time, which was unusual to have 2 committee ships. But anyway, then 4 years ago, I was given the House chairman of the what they call Infrastructure and General Government Appropriation Committee. That was a $2.8 billion. It's responsible for any new building, any new infrastructure the state creates, including roads. And like I said, it has a $2.8 billion budget, which isn't the biggest budget, but it's one of the bigger budgets that we have.
Does that include the repairing the roads on the state level?
Yeah, all new roads.
Okay.
And so since I've had that position, from 2013 to 2018, Tooele County's received $400 million in road improvements. And we have another, that does not include the overpass at Lake Point, which is $45 million. The overpass at I-80 in Black Rock, which is $70 million. And the 21st overpass, which has been appropriated for but not under construction yet.
Is that one out kind of north Sheep Lane?
No, that's called Mid-Valley Highway. That was a $70 million appropriation. And right now, the road is built, but because we're building on marshy areas, we have to let it settle for a year. The engineers estimate it'll probably settle about 6 feet before we can pave it, and that'll be next spring.
Okay. I'm kind of excited to see what that one does for traffic around the point of the mountain.
It'll help. It'll help a lot.
Keep people on I-80 that are going to Grantsville a little longer and ease up Lake Point a little bit. Yeah,
there's also, when we built that, the county acquired a right-of-way from, it's one of the major roads in Stansbury. It comes past the little business center up on the south end and curves around like this.
Yeah.
And comes down the Grantsville Highway. The county acquired rights-of-way to build a road from there all the way down to the Mid-Valley Highway at the interchange.
Okay.
And so that'll provide another access from that end of Stansbury to go there. I'm waiting for someone, either the county or Grantsville, depending on how their annexation goes, to designate the next stage of Mid-Valley Highway, at least as far as the route's going to be. So
do they want it to cut through to Sheep Lane, or?
It'll come all the way up through the Tooele Army Depot and out to Stockton when it's all done.
Okay. So you're just waiting for them to kind of dedicate where the exact route is?
Exactly. Then we can, the state, I'll appropriate funds for the state to start doing the design and engineering work on that, and if need be, an environmental impact statement.
Okay.
Is there going to be a lot of time to settle on that road as
No,
well?
that's entirely different. That's solid ground.
Yeah.
Where we're going was kind of a very marshy area.
Yeah, it's salt marsh.
Yeah, and we had to do an environmental impact statement that was going to expire. It had been done a number of years ago, and so we were really trying to get that done. And that was, it was a pretty big effort to get the funding in place and get the highway designed and then acquire the property.
Well, speaking of environmental impacts, I know our fertilizers are starting to really increase, like the phosphorus levels in the soils. Do you have to do anything with the legislature in regards to like environmental impacts on such things as like the farming in our community? Or
I do. I also serve on the Natural Resources Environment Committee, which covers anything from mining to the air to water rights to the whole ball of wax. That's a genuine concern. The phosphate levels in drinking water, even in our county, Erda, where there are a lot of people on septic tanks, they have a high phosphate level right now. It's not the point that it's dangerous to health, but it's increasing each and every year.
it looks like it's about the halfway mark. They call it the action level.
And that's a concern.
Because there's no way to really bring it back down that I'm aware of.
I don't think there is, unless you'd have to go down and pump up the aquifer. It'd be prohibitive, cost prohibitive
Right.
to do that. That's a concern I have. I think that with all respect, some of the homes down there are just way too close. Should be on 5-acre lots, and they're on half-acre lots, and they're all on wells, and that's going to be very problematic going forward.
So the higher the density, the increase the levels.
Yeah.
And if you can't bring these levels down, that's what what happens is, I think when it gets to 10 parts per million, it can create blue baby syndrome and things like that for infants that are about to be born.
Creates all kinds of issues and
Yeah.
problems, and what would have to happen is the wells would have to be shut down. They could no longer be potable water. Then the question becomes, where do you get the water from at that point in time? That's going to be a big issue for our county over the next couple of years. Back in the 50s, when they built the Central Utah project, Tooele County opted out. That was a project to bring water from out in the Uinta Basin, Colorado River, all through.
Pull that microphone in just.
Yeah. It was used to bring water in from the Colorado River, Uinta Basin, up along the Wasatch Front, going back into the Uintas. Tooele County opted out of that. Said, we have enough water to last us forever. And so that provides basically all the Salt Lake Valley water and Utah County water. We're now looking at two big water projects. The St. George project pipeline, which is facing all kinds of environmental concerns and issues. And then we're talking about bringing water out of Bear Lake via a pipeline down into the Wasatch Front area. It's interesting. We use drinking water and water used just by homes and things consumes about 20% of our total water volume. Agriculture consumes the rest of that balance for the most part, and industry, but mostly agriculture. And so we've been looking at trying to encourage agriculture to discover different ways of irrigating that are more efficient and providing incentives for them to do that, tax incentives or what else we can do to make sure that happens. Utah is going to grow. Tooele County is going to grow very, very rapidly.
I think we're growing faster than most, aren't we?
We are. And we haven't began to. That's one of my biggest concerns right now, to be honest. If you look at the Wasatch Front, Salt Lake County has 400,000 developable acres left. And that's already been designated for what they're going to build on it. And so it's in the process of being built out. Utah County, clear down to Pace, is becoming built out. So they come over into the Cedar Valley. And to commute to the main business centers in Salt Lake or at the point of the mountain is becoming more and more suspect. The inland port out near the airport will produce 15,000 jobs is what we estimate over the next 10 years, 10 to 15 years. Salt Lake's built out. Davis County is built out and landlocked now. Weber County is almost landlocked completely. So you're talking about going up into the Brigham City area and things like that for new housing. You can go east, but again, Eden and up in that area, the Ogden Valley, very little ground to go. Park City, that area is growing very rapidly. And so if you want to work at that area or in Salt Lake, we're it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you think this growth is going to shift our political dynamic?
I think, yeah, it could. It definitely could. It's going to change the entire valley is what it's going to do.
Mm-hmm.
We'll become just, we have to plan for roads, for water, for sewer, for the whole ball of wax. If we don't, we're going to be left behind.
Now, there was a project last commission race that was talked about. It was boring a tunnel through the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually had a dollar amount associated to the project. I don't know where they got the dollar amount. I'm not sure if it was accurate, but it was very expensive.
$4 billion.
$4 billion. Now, does Utah have equipment that can make tunnels like that, or is that something that we would have to import from another place?
It'd be contracted. It'd probably be someone like Peter Kiewitz or somebody like that does that type of work for, that's their bread and butter work. There's also been discussion about taking a road up above Lake Point around the point of the mountain, up on the side of the mountain. That road would cost for the section from Lake Point down to 21st South, where you get off on 21st South, $300 million.
Mm.
I can just tell you right now, it's not going to happen.
And to do a project like that, you have to take people's land, right?
Yeah. You have Kennecott and Railroad, and the Railroad, they have more power than the Congress does, it seems like at times.
Well, I don't think it seems like
I'm sure they do.
They've definitely got a lot of power.
When we were building the overpass, they actually stopped it, the overpass, the one that's completed now. And the paperwork had been done. The guy supposed to sign it got fired before he signed the paperwork. And the state had to start over with somebody else, and that delayed that project by 2 years.
Mm.
The railroad did that just to spite people?
It's the railroad. They didn't give an answer why.
I deal with the railroad every day at work, and yeah, they cross states, they run the show.
Yeah, it was just very strange. I thought, what?
Well, I'm glad that BNSF, the secondary rail service, is coming into power to at least break the monopoly the Union Pacific has had.
I agree.
Break the monopoly, maybe the UP will start acting a little friendlier, because the UP, if they get a wild hair to mistreat you, there's nothing you can do and no one to complain to.
Yeah. We were concerned about their freight engines in the yard and the pollution they create in a given year. And we approached them and talked, hey, can we work with you to clean this up? No.
Yeah.
That was it. No.
Yeah.
End of discussion.
What are you talking about over here in?
No, I'm talking about in Salt Lake.
Okay.
In North Salt Lake, they have.
What do they call that yard there? Got a name for it, but yeah, the UP doesn't. I mean, honestly, when you look at it, they're kind of a major artery for goods.
They are,
especially raw goods. They're the biggest game. So, but BNSF is now on the market. They're actually gaining from what I've heard, a couple of customers along our rail line here that runs next to I-80. And, add a little competition, free up the market.
There's been discussion, I don't know how far it's gone, of taking the old rail line. It was at the Tooele Army Depot that ran down through the, next to the Desert Peak Complex, down through part of Grantsville, out to the I-80 line. That may happen.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. There's been discussion about it. And from what I gather, there's been commitments made to build that road. And again, that would help us.
I think that getting that spur back up so that you can gain a little more industry out that way. That wouldn't be a bad thing at all.
And that's an important strategic part of rail right there, because Tooele Army Depot's mission is to get the munitions out to our troops so that they can deploy. The faster they can do that, the faster we get supplied in the field. And any help from government to make that a faster process.
Absolutely. This is a depot that services all the munitions for the Pacific region, which is critical. I don't know. It's conjecture, but if we have another war, it'll be in the Pacific.
Yeah. Hope not, but yeah.
I hope not too.
It's a scary war.
Scary prospect.
So going geopolitical here, I'd like to hear about your political philosophies. We had Stormy on. She had a large opportunity to tell us about her political ideas and philosophies. I'd love to hear about, how do you think in terms of politics? Are you kind of more like Tea Party, or like a moderate conservative? Where do you stand on the political line there?
I don't think my issues are that well defined. First, I hate politics. If we're gonna have a discussion, don't treat me like a mushroom and feed me a bunch of BS. If you do, I'm gonna walk away. I tell it like it is, and I probably lean more to the conservative side on a lot of issues. Other issues like healthcare, I'm more liberal, and so it depends on the issue. I know that sounds really silly.
So then maybe like a core value, like when you see an issue, how do you measure it when it comes to Doug Sagers? Like what kind of like I'll use like a philosophy called the non-aggression principle, and I'll try to apply it to an issue and see how I believe in it. How would you do it?
Whenever I see an issue or a problem, I try to measure it or quantify it. There's no doubt. Years ago, I went to training at Harvard University when I was doing investment banking work. And a guy made a comment that really struck a nerve. He says, if you can't measure something, you can't manage it. That's my philosophy. So if a bill comes through, I look at it. I want to know what the social impact is, the economic impact, what the best benefit is. And if they can't answer those three questions, then I vote no. It's as simple as that. What's the cost going to be? Okay. What's our return on investment going to be? If we do this, what's the benefit? If you can't quantify it, it's not a good bill. Either it benefits people in some way, it generates jobs, whatever the case may be. It has to have a beneficial aspect. That's kind of how I run my life. I believe my time has a value, and I'm very impatient with people that just come in and say, well, I want to talk about this abstract notion I have, and I'm just going. When you have something formulated and you have a good idea, bring it back and we'll talk about it.
Is that why you hung up on the lady when she called your house at 3:00 in the morning?
I'm going. I mean, there are a lot of strange things happened while I was mayor. Christmas Eve, we're over at a friend's house, and at midnight the phone rings, and the guy says, "Hey, Doug, it's for you." I said, "Hello? We know your children are home alone." Slammed down the phone, called 911, had the police go to my house immediately, went to my car, got my car, went home. And, that's terrifying.
So it was like a threat.
Yeah.
Do you think that they were just trying to rattle you, or?
Well, he did a good job.
Well, yeah. I mean, what's the point? On a back then in the 80s, Tooele wasn't as big as it is now. What back then in the 80s? What, probably 15,000?
About 20,000, I think.
20,000 people. So are they gonna? Yeah, I just don't get it. I don't see operating like that in the world anyway. So maybe that's why I don't get it.
Yeah, I was sick till we got home. The kids were okay, and until I knew we were at this particular house, still mystifies me.
Mm.
It was a businessman on the east side of town, the west side of town, I'm sorry. And there was, a group of us there. And he says, "Hey, Doug, the phone's for you."
Hmm.
And it's just really, really strange.
Hmm.
But anyway, whenever I look at a bill, and I've ran some interesting bills. One was some folks from Stanbury Park who called us representatives. I always just, please call me Doug. Said our son was attending college down at Dixie State. He'd gone to a party. He'd been drunk. Was out in his car. He had passed out. He was 18 years old. Well, he was arrested by the police for DUI. Said, okay. Said he didn't ever drive the car. But now, under the current law, he cannot get his license back till he's 21, period.
So he was just in the car.
In the car. And he said, there's no recourse. And I said, well, that can't be. What do the judges say? He said, it's in statute. Would you consider running a bill, and would you look at that? I reluctantly said yes. Reason being, when I was about, I guess, 11 years old, my dad was at a meeting, and I got a phone call from LDS Hospital saying, "Is your dad there?" "No." "Who's there?" I said, "Me." "When your dad gets home, tell him your mom was in a car accident and your sister in her LDS Hospital in critical condition. He needs to come in." Click. So I remember my dad walking through the door. He says, "Dad, Mom and Jan had been in a car wreck and they're in critical condition at LDS Hospital." He just turned around and walked out the door. And come to find out, the guy that hit him was a drunk driver on 21st South. Our car, the engine was up in the driver's area. He walked away unscratched, and that colored my view on drunk driving. I was just so opposed to it. My mom came home about a month later, and I lived in Pine Canyon. I rode the bus to school. I came in. My dad says, "Mom's in the living room." I walked in. I thought, "Who is that?"
Mm.
My mom's nose was smashed against her face. Her eyes were black. I just wanted to throw up, and I just walked out, but out in my backyard, and just cried. And I thought, if that's what a drunk driver will do, never mind. So I thought about this. I thought, this is going to be really difficult. Mother gets drunk driving to come out against it. It's going to be the most difficult bill to pass ever. I was thinking about it. More families came forward and says, look, our kids got picked up for DUI. They want to go on a mission, but you have to have a driver's license to go on an LDS mission. They can't go. They can't go to college because, they need to have jobs and they can't drive. And so I actually went to court with one girl to testify before the judge, and the judge says, "Mr. Sagers, what you're asking, the law says we cannot do that." So I reluctantly agreed to, take up legislation to do away with that and make it so, that it was at the discretion of a judge to determine the severity of the penalty, not just arbitrarily by state law.
Mm-hmm.
I was nervous as could be when it came before the House for a vote. And
Yeah, in Utah, that's probably kind of a pretty rough bill to put up there. Anything that's maybe viewed as alcohol or substance positive.
Yeah. So I expected to get my fanny kicked. I presented the bill. A bunch of legislators have been there for a long time. Says, when we passed that bill in 2008, we made a mistake.
Hmm.
And the bill passed the House unanimously, went to the Senate where it passed unanimously. The governor signed it when it hit his desk. But that was a good awakening for me. But so that my positions on different things just are based on what I believe to be the right thing. And that one, I just I knew that MAD was going to come out, and actually MAD supported the bill. They spoke in favor of the bill as well.
Well, and that's a good thing where you threw nuance in there. The kid wasn't driving, so maybe we can give him a small fine. Whereas if he was driving and pulled over on the road, that's when you enact a larger extent of it, if not the full.
Yeah, leave it to the discretion of the courts. I mean, to enact a law like that just is black and white with no give or take, it's just not a good law.
I think that's dangerous, actually, to do something like that.
I agree.
The judges are elected as judges to judge, and I think the law takes away the capacity for the judges to use the logic of life in an if-then statement that's created by the government. Because maybe your son was in a cold well, it's Utah, it doesn't get too cold here, but I know I have been in a cold environment in upstate New York where I used to live and go to college. I'd go to my car. I wouldn't turn it on. I wouldn't drive it, but I'd pass out in the car.
Sure.
Seek shelter in there to get away from the cold. Now, I don't think it would behoove society to find me frozen to the ground underneath my car to avoid the law, but dead because I wanted to stay within the parameters of the law. So, I mean, yeah, I think you save lives when you allow common sense to take place in the legal system. I think the black and white laws probably do more damage than they do good, to be honest with you.
I agree.
Yeah.
These kids, they couldn't work. Difficult to date. Hey, Dad, are you taking on my date? Disrupted their entire lives.
Oh boy.
From 16 to 21 or whatever their age may be.
I couldn't imagine my boy having to have me take him on a date. That'd be rough for him. I mean,
that's just kind of an example of how I come down on things.
Okay, well, before we move on to, I want to ask you here in a minute about, before we move on, Dave, how do you like the blueberry IPA? It's pretty good.
I don't taste a lot of blueberry in it.
No, it's a scent thing.
But it's good.
All
it's
right.
good.
Good.
I'm happy with it.
I like the color.
I think I like this better than the Saison was.
Yeah, it's not as sweet.
Your first one was still, I think, it was good.
Regular IPA. That's going to be.
I'm going to say this one's second place.
All right,
out of the three.
Good. Well, that's Jared's blueberry IPA, and next I'll order just a regular IPA, or maybe I'll try a Pilsner. All right, Doug. So I want to ask you about when you initially decided to run for the House. What drew you to it? What did you notice that drew you into wanting to, throw your hat in the ring? And was there an issue, or was it just a feeling you had to do it?
I was a reluctant candidate. I'd argued with this feeling for about 4 years. It kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger. I kept saying, I've paid my dues. 8 years of mayor. Give me a break. And I eventually got to the point that says, okay, I'll do it. I have no idea why.
So there wasn't a driving force, like I've got to fix this one thing. It was just...
I wish there were.
Maybe just driving every day, finding a pothole, or...
No.
Nothing?
No.
Of course, Tooele back then and Grantsville, there was plenty of potholes.
Oh, there were.
Yeah.
Believe me. My election was based on, it was called a pothole election. You couldn't drive down Main Street without,
oh, yeah.
potholes everywhere. It was just horrible.
Yeah.
And, no, it's, at one point in time I thought, let me give you some background. When I was a kid, when John Kennedy was elected, my mom and dad says, we elected a Catholic. I thought, a Catholic? Oh, my gosh. Everybody I knew was Mormon.
Mm-hmm.
Little dinky town, little farming town. Now what?
Well, you were in Pine Canyon, so you were the little farming outskirts of a little farming town.
Yeah, exactly. I remember the day after the election, getting on the bus, talking to the little neighbor, go, we elected a Catholic. I didn't know what that meant,
Mm-hmm.
other than he wasn't a Mormon. And so I thought, I'm going to watch this guy. And I became enamored with JFK. I listened to his speeches, I read his books, everything I could learn. And I thought, I'm a Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was killed, I remember that just as clearly as it was.
Well, back then, Tooele was pretty strong in Democrats.
It was totally Democrat.
We're mostly Democrats.
Yeah. Everyone was a Democrat.
Back then, yeah. The Republicans kind of owned the Northeast.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I would argue Trump is a Democrat still, even though he's a Republican, but he seems like more of a old school Democrat from my perspective.
Yeah, he seems to I don't know, he doesn't legislate, but he seems to operate as
Kind of like a
Clinton
heavy FDR or something,
well,
I'll do what I want to do, and this
I'm
is
not
how
a
it
fan
needs
of
to be.
FDR, but if
Nah.
my grandma hears me say that, she gets frustrated.
Yeah.
So would mine if she was still
Anyway,
alive.
so I was in high school, freshman in high school. I was walking from one area to the other. We had shops over here. You may remember that, where the old shops were. And then
Mm-hmm.
you'd walk up to the high school. Walked in high school, and a guy named Wes Shields said, President Kennedy's been shot. I said, what?
Mm.
And I didn't know what to think. We go to class, and an hour later, it says, President Kennedy's dead. And we all went to the gym. I'm sitting here thinking, I was just shocked. I thought, I need to do something with my life. So in freshman high school is when I decided to get involved in politics.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought my first business when I was 20. It was called Tooele, Florida. It's at a different location now than it is where it is now.
Mm-hmm.
It's up further up south on Main Street.
Can you say that again? What was it called?
Tooele.
Floral.
Okay.
Tooele Floral. Okay.
It's still in existence, just in a different
Mhm.
location.
Yeah, it's right there next to the 7-Eleven.
And did pretty well with that for a while, but I still just had this feeling I needed to be involved in politics. And one day I got a call from, it was Nolan and Paul Thomas, a couple of old Republicans. Says, what party are you? I said, I'm a Democrat. Well, let us talk to you. We want to talk to you. Said, we want you to be the Republican county chairman. Okay.
Yeah.
I had no idea what that meant. And so I became a Republican at that time, I guess. JFK is still one of my heroes.
No, and I don't think that, especially when you go that far back, the parties are different than they were then.
They are. They were absolutely different. It's
You
not,
know.
Not the contention, the bitterness, whatever it is we have right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I try thinking back historically when we've had it this bad, and 68 was rough. Just historically, I wasn't alive then, but I've studied.
It was a difficult time. It really was. The Vietnam War and everything else.
68, they had 32 domestic bombings.
I can imagine that Russia, what were they thinking when JFK died? I'm sure they must have been freaking out too.
Oh, yeah.
I can imagine fingers just
I'll
like,
bet Khrushchev
are we going
was-
to war?
Yeah.
I
That
don't
was a
know.
concern. It really was. And
Mhm.
Johnson was such an unknown.
Yeah.
It was just such a strange time. The whole world was on edge.
I feel like we're kind of back in that place right now.
Oh, I agree. I'm really very, very deeply concerned
Yeah.
about the future. I'm old.
Yeah.
I fear for my kids and my grandkids.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of where I am. I tend not to go into Salt Lake City as much anymore. I just and that's one of the safer middle-sized cities, but I tend to stay away from it. I don't want to get caught up at where I even, witness a cop car being thrown or any of that. I just
No.
I don't know.
I agree. It's whole world's just topsy-turvy right now.
It
It's
is.
very disturbing.
It is. Well, on talking about right now,
Okay.
what are your goals right now? That you mentioned gaining a Senate seat for us.
Mhm.
What are some other goals? Like you're running right now. What's your kind of pitch to the people?
Okay. My
Let's
priorities
pull
are-
that mic right up to you. This is the important part.
My main priorities are infrastructure,
Uh-huh.
roads, and right now we'll complete the two overpasses. The one at the two I-80 in Black Rock, and then the 21st South overpass have all been funded.
Mm-hmm.
We've completed a $5 million project on I-80 with the third lane coming out from the 21st South on road, whatever you want to call it.
Okay, so they're going to put another lane coming in and around that.
So what we're doing is the environmental impact statement's been completed to take the to make it a 4-lane highway from Kennecott Tailings Ponds and the light there
Mm-hmm.
all the way out to 80.
So instead of where it comes in to two
Two
lanes,
lanes.
just keep it 4 lanes all the way up and over and down in.
Exactly.
All right, sounds good.
And that's a $250 million project.
Mm-hmm.
God, the
Part of-
roads are so expensive.
Yeah.
It's insane
It-
to
it-
think about.
Yeah, that little stretch of concrete was $5 million from 21st, the overpass, up to the overpass at Lake.
We should start bidding on roads. I mean, I've got a bucket and a shovel. It'd take us a minute longer than the professionals, but we could drive the prices down.
So that's something I'm working on, and that'll help traffic.
Mm-hmm.
The extension of the Mid-Valley Highway is going to be huge and important.
I'm excited to see it. Now you're saying that won't be ready to go for another, how long? Another couple years?
We'll pave the section in place now next spring.
Okay.
That'll bring it from I-80 up to the Grantsville Highway 38, SR 38.
Okay.
And now, once we designate or find the route they want to take from 38 up to the other road to Grantsville, we'll start on that section of highway, start the funding, the engineering process for that.
Okay.
And we'll put an overpass at the Grantsville Highway 38 as it goes up to Stanville. There'll be an overpass there.
Okay. Pull it in real close. And what else? Are you still on the ethics committee?
Yes.
And I feel that's extremely important in my mind because I'm one of those wackadoos who think that law enforcement, politicians, people who've been given authority should be exemplary people.
I agree.
I think they should be, and I think they should be held even to a higher standard than the plebs underneath them. They should be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you can't trust someone, well, then they have no value to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they may have value. They can go be a gardener or.
Well, yeah, they
know.
can be a gardener. But I won't trust
But I
them with
don't-
anything of any consequence.
Yeah, I don't want them touching my wallet or my water or, the laws.
Every now and again, the Democrats and the Republicans caucus differently during the session and during meetings during the interim period. And occasionally we'll have what they call a closed caucus, where we talk about a budget issue or something that we're still in process, it's not finalized, and we don't want the public to say, oh, yeah, they're going to do that, and not do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's always someone that goes out and tells the press.
Mm.
I mean, we'll be in a meeting in this closed room. We'll walk out and the press says, what about this? You go, did you have your ear to the door? Well, someone was leaking from inside inside the group.
And that's unethical because you kind of.
Is it though? Because I mean, we do pay for our representatives' hourly schedule.
Well, that is true.
We are
That
their
is true.
boss. From my perspective, if I were, which will never happen because of the Hatch Act, I'm a government employee, but if I were to ever obtain a position where I got to pass laws or make laws or decide on laws, I would actually be for a very transparent government where, I don't know, I think the people on the top should have to wear the body cams, not the police officers who enforce what the people on top want to be done.
Let me give you an example. Oftentimes you may be talking about litigation or some type of settlement,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still negotiation. And so you have two sides negotiating, and say, okay, this is where we're at, this is where they're at, this is what we're thinking we can do to resolve that. All of a sudden that becomes public. You've lost your leverage
That's true.
to reach a good settlement.
Both sides have.
Yeah. So when
Yeah.
some jerk goes out and tells the press, we're going to do this, and it blows the whole thing up, it drives me crazy.
I can probably understand it from your point of view a little bit, but I've never been in that position. I know from my perspective, I'm the pleb. I see up, so you get a different point of view because you look down and you can see the whole thing, where I can only see a portion. So I mean, there has to be a tolerance level understood between the two parties. And when we on this side of the fence see the closed door meetings, and the laws are in your hands. You know, you are the deciders, and we see the closed doors. You got to understand that puts the fear of God to us little peoples who elected the leaders. And you know, I think if our system requires closed doors, then our system's wrong. Something's wrong. Because if, like you said, if you can't trust people, they're useless to you, right?
Well, I mean, I agree with you to a degree. Let me explain what I mean. When I was mayor, we'd be out looking to buy a parcel of property or something, and we'd close a meeting to discuss that transaction. So if someone knows you're looking to buy their property, all of a sudden prices are going to increase dramatically. You've lost your advantage. Mm-hmm. It's no longer a level playing field. I would say 99% of our meetings are open to the public. So those meetings when you have a serious problem that it involves negotiation or something like that could be jeopardized by the other side knowing what our objective was or our goal. And the Democrats do the same thing. Both parties do that when they need to. And you get it. It doesn't happen very often. What happened the last time it happened? We walk out, and there's people in the press saying, "Well, what about this?" We're going, it destroyed the whole negotiation, and the thing fell apart. And
what was that thing over?
It was acquisition of property, land.
For the government? For the government,
yeah. And so, the government's, they've got billions of dollars to spend. That may be true, but every dime, every dollar is accounted for and already programmed. I'll go through some of our budgets in a minute if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
Give you an idea of what that looks like. And so we had a meeting the next day, and it was open to the public. And I was upset. So I stood up, I raised my hands because it's Doug. I stood up and I went off. I said, "This is bullshit." And hush.
Yeah, you don't seem like a guy that throws curse words out flippantly.
I don't. And I said, whoever did this destroyed a very important negotiation that would have benefited the state of Utah. That is now off the table. Hope you're happy.
What was the negotiation, if you don't mind me asking?
It was acquisition of property.
For?
It was out by where the prison's going.
Okay. So it was a plan to put a new prison in a different location?
Yeah. Well, it's where the prison currently is. We need an additional land for expansion for some service utilities. And so rather than going for, let's say, $10 an acre, it went up to like $1,000 an acre.
$10 an acre.
I don't remember what the exact number was, but it went up dramatically.
Gotcha. It went up tenfold.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, that project, have to go out and look at another way to do what we wanted to accomplish. I felt that was unethical. It was nothing secret or sacred, because for any action to take place is done on the floor. You can't make a decision.
But this was just the pre-negotiation, kind of the...
Guys, this is what we're up against. This is what we're doing. We want you to be aware of it. And any budget and any information that takes a formal process is done on the floor. Nothing's done behind closed doors. Mm-hmm. It's either done in a committee where the public's present, or on the House floor where, the public is present.
And even though it might, even though it costs more money in the long end for the state, I don't think there's a price you can put on transparency when it comes to government. We're putting so much risk and so much trust into people with power that, I mean, I know you're a big economics guy, but me, I'm a big freedom guy.
I understand.
I served so much time in the military and dedicated my entire life to preserving the freedom process, where I really think it's water in drops in a bucket when it comes to any cost that eliminates the closed door sessions. I think Congress has way too many closed door sessions.
And I agree. I think decisions are made in Congress behind closed doors, and that's inappropriate.
And I
that
think
would be inappropriate at the state level as well, or any level of
Right.
government for that matter.
so. Even though it does cost us money, and we lose deals on things like that, you know what? If it puts more transparency in front of the people, it might be worth it in the end. I understand governments always pay for golden toilet seats anyway, and
I can show you where I'm in the house.
yeah. And
I know
heard
what you mean.
you're a limited government individual, right?
Absolutely.
Could you say that about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely.
So let me ask you this about that prison system. What do you think of Utah's prison system in general? Do you think that it needs to move around and expand, or I don't know? What's your take on it from your perspective?
I have a unique perspective. I spent 3 years down at the Utah State Prison doing ecclesiastical work. I spent 6 years in the Tooele County Jail doing ecclesiastical work.
So you're down there preaching. Were you down there on a assigned mission through the church?
Yes,
Okay.
I was.
Good.
And we got a call to a guy whose name is Roy King, another guy named brain cramp. Bought Robert Wells, both in high capacity positions within the LDS Church. I said, Doug, how would you and Carrie like to serve at the prison? I said, okay. It was on a Saturday, I was out mowing my grass, and Carrie comes and says, hey, Roy King's on the phone, Doug. And I said, okay, we will. And he hung up. I thought, what have I committed us to? So he says, hey, Carrie says, what did he want? He says, we're going to serve at the prison.
We've been called.
And she laughed. She says, no, what did you really want? She says, we're going to serve at the prison. And so we had to go through an orientation process. You go in, where you go through the bowels of the prison. If there's a riot or something, this is where you go. If you can't get there, then just you're on your own.
Yeah.
And that's pretty sobering as you walk in and there are cat calls and all this other crap, and think if I can get a cell, maybe if something happens, we'll be okay. Anyway, and they signed us. We had an overall mission, for lack of a better word, to preach, to talk to different people about LDS people and try to help them out a little bit. We had one specific assignment, and we learned about our first day we were supposed to go down to the prison for a formal meeting. He goes, okay, Doug, you're going to meet with a guy named such and such, and he's a convicted murderer. All the way from Tooele all the way down to the point of the mountain, we didn't say a word. We didn't realize it till afterwards. And you go through the doors, clang, 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 as you get into the bowels of the prison. And we're thinking, and here's a little room. It's about the size of this office we're in. And we'll bring a guy in a few minutes. We're going to come face to face with a murder.
Mm.
Kind of nerve-wracking. He comes in, he was probably in his late 30s. And we were both pretty apprehensive. There were no pencils or anything else that anybody could hurt anybody with, but we started talking. The guy told us his life story. Said he grew up, his parents abandoned him when he was a child. Him and his sister and his grandmother raised him. They were raised Catholic, and she'd send him over to catechism and different things, and they'd go play in the park rather than go. And he became a wild guy. He was 18. He got in a fight and killed 2 other guys in a gang fight. Shot 2 other guys. Was imprisoned in Arizona. Escaped. Got caught. Spent 90 days in isolation. Said no clothing, no bedding, just a cot with a mattress on it. And I wanted to kill myself so bad. The guards would come in and just laugh at me. I'd bring my food twice a day and just laugh at me. So I wanted to die. And I thought I just need to kill myself. He said, but I didn't. He said, in prison, you earn things you can use by behaving, for lack of a better word. After 3 or 4 years, I finally was able to get a small TV. I remember on my cot one day watching, I don't know what it was. It was a show about Christ, and when they hung him on the cross, and he says, I'm laying in my bed watching this thing, it's interesting, I guess. And he says, all of a sudden, Christ hanging on the cross, and I'm looking at the TV, and the guy I shot, one of the people I killed, his face replaced Christ's face. He said, really shook me up. So I closed my eyes and it was just terrifying. I opened my eyes again. The second guy I killed, his face, it was in the face of Christ. So I got on my knees and started praying. And I've been praying ever since, trying to get my life straight. I do what I can to pay my dues if it's possible. And so that's my story. And we were there for 3 years. We had held meetings on Sundays with there's probably about 20 prisoners there, and there's about maybe 6 people as volunteers. Did that for 5 years, and really an interesting experience. It gave you a whole different perspective on prisons and what they can do and what they can't do. And it was very sobering. And then that ended, and about 15 years later, I got a call from the three LA State presidents. They said, well, it's got to be for you, Carrie. She was the emergency management director for the county for a number of years under the CSEP program. And it's going to be something you're going to do to help with safety in the county. They said, Doug, would you serve in the jail? We want to open up a branch in the jail and provide religious services at the jail. I said, sure.
Pull that mic in a little bit closer.
I said, sure. And so I did that for 5 years. And again, it was a very sobering experience. You meet a lot of people, and their stories were heartbreaking. There was, the men would have a certain, and the women would have a different service because they had to be segregated. But I remember a number of women were addicted to meth. And I remember them talking about, one woman says, look, I thought I could lose weight by using it. And what ended up happening is I remember my children were around me crying, saying, we're hungry, Mom, and they didn't care.
Mm.
And said, it's the worst thing I've ever done in my life. And so, you see people in really difficult times. And, I'm no angel. I'm not perfect. I've made stupid mistakes and done dumb things. But it brings me a sense of, for lack of a better, deeper understanding of the human condition. If you're perfect, you shouldn't be here, because nobody's perfect. And I can't judge anybody. At least I try not to. And that's just kind of, it's just what I believe. I may get angry at somebody for being, fellow legislators for doing something dumb. I had one guy that was running legislation. He wanted to be able to bury a horse in his backyard, living in a subdivision.
This was a legislator?
Yeah. He's now a senator.
How big was his backyard?
Yeah.
In a subdivision, he wanted to bury a horse in his backyard and enter all that decay into such a small area?
Yeah.
That's a lot of decay in a small... I mean, to probably make a heck of a year later, probably grow the best flowers and tomatoes you ever saw. But
I know. I'm just going...
I have a feeling that they've done dumber things.
Oh, yeah. Some of the bills come forth, you go, really? What plant you come from? I mean, and you just have to laugh. But I remember, so what we did is we brought a cake in, and the speaker didn't know it. I got chewed out for this. Put it on the dais, and had a horse with some flowers in the cake, with a dead horse with its legs sticking up in the
air. Well, on the prison point, I have a few Utah doesn't really have a lot of the bigger issues, but a couple of issues nationally that I think that Utah partake in. I don't like civil asset forfeiture.
I agree.
I don't like that. I think for the government to take someone's property prior to them being found guilty is wrong, and that also takes their defense in court away at the same time.
It violates due process. It's as simple as that, and that's just wrong.
Yeah. Oh, and so we agree on that. That's
We do have a question in the audience.
Oh,
Okay, great.
Okay, so here's the question, and it's from Milena. A lot of candidates are talking about education. What are your views on education, and what kind of legislation has been passed to help the education in Tooele County? And yeah, she's got a great point. A lot of talk about education, especially with the school bond coming up, and the pods and the home schooling, and the fact that I think all of our taxes for purchases go towards education, correct? So
Let me give you a breakdown of the budget. This might answer part of that question. Higher education gets 29% of the budget.
of the state budget,
Yeah.
of all the income that comes in through paychecks and through purchases of products.
Every dime that comes in, 29% goes to higher education, 35% goes to primary education. Over the last 4 years, we've increased the budget by several $billion a year. Last year, we would have had the largest increase in the budget ever in the history of the state. We were running huge surpluses, and the COVID-19 problem occurred, and I had to cut $1 billion out of my $2.8 billion budget to balance our budget. So we raided rainy day funds. We were scrambling to make sure that we had a balanced budget, and we worked throughout the summer on that and through early this fall to make sure that we were okay. But education has always been one of my highest priorities, and the reason is simple. Without educated people, you don't have to have a college degree. Don't get me wrong. I think a lot of times a college degree isn't necessary. When you go out and learn a trade, you go out and be making $30 or $40 an hour as a welder or whatever the case may be, without $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 in debt for a college degree. You come out and you get a degree in sociology, you may make $30,000 a year.
yeah, there's a lot of people pursuing college degrees right now that are a net negative on their life.
Absolutely.
Most of your humanities degrees and things like that, or they do those pursuits like into psychology and stuff where they only meet that bachelor level, or even, whereas you've got to hit a doctorate level before that's got any real significant value for your life, where you can make enough money to even pay it back.
Yeah. Last year in the budget cut, one of the things that I felt the worst about was we'd appropriated just under $17 million for Tooele Tech to expand their campus.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, they're above capacity.
Mm-hmm.
I met with them this morning for a couple of hours, and we're talking about it and looking at their needs and requirements. And they have a welding program, and the welders can go out and make $60 an hour.
Oh, yeah.
And that's pretty
Easy.
darn impressive.
Oh, yeah.
And their classes are over, or more than full now. They're actually above capacity. And we canceled all the buildings. College buildings, state buildings, everything was just canceled. Just cut out of my budget. Saying we'll do it possibly this year.
Mm.
I believe that in this next session, Tooele Tech will be funded. They're the number one priority in that system, that part of the education system. They recognize the benefit and the value and the need.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll come through my committee again, and I believe you'll balance that. Just give you some other information on the budget.
Yeah, we go to Tooele Tech for work for a lot of when we have our big safety meetings twice a year and things like that. We do it at Tooele Tech, and it's a nice campus. It's, Matter of fact, my work provided quite a bit of the shrubbery that they planted outside of it.
It's a beautiful facility.
Mhm.
It really is.
Yeah.
Well, we've outgrown it.
Well, and it provides a lot of, welding, mechanics classes. I think up to like level 3 certification classes or something. I can't remember the exact, but they take you quite up in mechanics, nursing, electronics,
Composites.
Computer programming.
yeah.
They do a lot of stuff. In fact, their mechanical program, they're now going to start going up to where they can work on yellow equipment, the big cats and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the new program they're going to initiate. There's a huge demand for that.
Oh yeah. And I think that's excellent.
What about online learning? What's your opinion about expanding online learning programs? And
Like
It
like for
depends.
primary school, high school.
I have very mixed emotions right now. My grandkids are on online learning, and it's not very effective.
Now, do you think that's because it's kind of brand new and forced on everyone? Do you think that maybe if we had a little while to design it, it might become a little better?
I mean, I know I personally learned more watching National Geographic History Channel than I did in history class. There's got to be, and I was what they called the resource room student, so I was like the special ed student. So I wasn't even really that smart in
I
comparison
like
to
how
my
he says
peers.
was. That was.
Well, I'd like to think I might have expanded my horizons slightly.
I do know that most of my learning happened after school, but I wouldn't say that's the problem with the school. That was the problem with my mentality then. Whereas now I'm thirsty to learn stuff, and like history, I'm thirsty to learn it, and I pursue it. I buy books that involve a subject and learn it. Where in high school I didn't care. It's just couldn't be bothered because I was a dipshit.
Welcome to my world. I was kind of a funny kid. I hated homework.
Oh,
I wouldn't do my
doesn't?
homework, but I'd ace my tests.
yeah.
I just say, I'll get that in a minute. And I didn't care. I was going to graduate. I knew the stuff, but I didn't want to do homework. I had other things to do. I had to, I lived on a farm.
Mm-hmm.
I'd do that. In high school, after I got my driver's license, I worked at the Army Depot part-time after school.
Mm-hmm.
And the homework just,
Yeah, well, I didn't like homework, schoolwork. I made it to some of my classes if they were later in the day.
but back to online learning. My daughter-in-law is an educator, has been for 17 years. Was named Teacher of the Year a couple of years ago by the Education Association. We have 3 grandchildren, and they're all home learning. My granddaughter is in junior high school. One of my grandsons is in the 5th grade. The other one's in 1st grade. And they're really struggling. And she took a leave of absence to teach them. But the social interaction is really creating problems for my grandkids.
The lack of, or
The lack of.
okay,
My son has a PhD and he works for a large university system. And his kids are all extremely intelligent. And they're doing online learning. And again, it's having the same effect on them. They're in Pennsylvania. My daughter-in-law's in Salt Lake. And the inability to interact with other people their own age has just created problems. I mean, they're still learning. They're still doing very well. But that social interaction is just creating havoc with them emotionally.
I think a lot of that problem is they do these learning classes where they get the child, the student sits there and just gets information pushed at him, and there's no interaction. And I think we need to enter the 21st century right now. The 3 of us are sitting here. We're being broadcasted out. Right now we only have 7 people watching us, but it's been as high as 15 tonight. And there'll be more people watch this show throughout the night and then again on the different programs. They can run school like that to where students can interact with the student next to them, and they can do it through a computer right now, where we're forced. I mean, my thoughts and feelings on forcing students home, the people least at risk to be harmed by this.
Right.
I think we're running that quite a bit backwards, but
I agree.
far be it from me to, criticize government like I never do every week. I'm the worst critic. I'm anti-government.
He's the backseat driver of government.
I am.
That's good.
Well, my issue
I
is
respect
government fails over and over.
I agree.
Over and over and over, and every time they want to grab more. After a failure, they say, well, we just didn't have enough of your wallet in our hands. We just didn't have enough of your property, enough of your time. And right now, in Utah, what's the average for the average worker? They take 45% of your income in taxes after you add up all the different taxes.
Could very well be. I mean, I don't know.
That's insane to think that a person, say he works 9 to 5,
Mm-hmm.
he'll work until, 12:30
Right.
to give it away.
Yeah.
That's a crazy thought, a crazy notion. I mean, we went to war once and kicked our government out for 3%. And now it's 45. And where you're from, good God, it's upwards of 50.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. I believe online education does have a place. It's for older students.
Yeah, but could they make it so that I've got a VR in the other room. I don't know if you know what they are, but it's a headset you wear. Can they build or can we build, whoever, build a virtual classroom where the kid puts on this rather inexpensive piece of equipment?
Mm-hmm.
The starting rate on that is, a $200 piece of equipment. That's cheaper than all the books. You can front load it with the books, front load it with the classroom program. They put it on. They're in a classroom with their fellow students. And then for recess, they just play with the neighborhood kids.
Yeah. No, we can. The example, Utah State does that already. I mean, people come into the classroom to learn, but they have a teacher they can actually communicate with on a screen.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wouldn't be that big of a step to do that for these kids I'm talking about. The problem is we need the infrastructure to do it.
Mm-hmm.
We need time to put it in place.
Mm-hmm.
And the pandemic, no one foresaw that.
No.
And I think we're doing a poor job of managing it, to be honest.
Well, and we've had bad education outcomes forever anyway. Everyone has.
Absolutely.
And this is another question about education, and this is going to rile a couple people up. Every year, more money gets thrown at education, and every year the outcomes drop a little bit. It seems like we're missing something. Money can't be the answer if the outcome's always lower.
Right. That's interesting. That's a good comment. Utah spends the largest share per capita out of our budget than most states do. But our education outcomes are equal with most other states.
Mm-hmm.
People say, well, what about the administrative costs? Well, 7% of the total amount that we give to education goes to administrative costs. And so that's reasonable. I mean, I think it could be a little bit less, but that's reasonable. But still, even though our outcomes are okay, I don't like okay.
Yeah. Well, I like private industry.
I agree.
I think we need more competition in education.
I agree.
More competition, more pinpointing. Instead of, I don't know what the answer is. Remember, I'm 2 generations from ape, but I hate to see. Everyone's always arguing we need to throw more money at education. And if you look at it historically, we do. Every year, more money's thrown at it. Every year, more money is fought for and given to it. And every year, the outcomes of the education system decline. That means there's a different issue than money.
Yeah. So if you look at social services, Medicare, Medicaid, that's the fastest growing segment of our budget.
Oh, yeah.
Again, that consumes 35%. So if you look at the percentages, that doesn't leave a lot left for everything else.
That's another question. If the nation goes to a nationwide single payer healthcare system, I know that the pro people like to speculate that'll contract the cost of but it won't, because right now, who is it? There's a famous YouTuber right now, Lauren Chen. She's from Canada. And her father has some kind of cancer, and because he can't get into Canada to see the technicians in time, he's coming to the U.S. I've got a in-law relative who had brain cancer and came to the U.S., and it was explained to her, had you waited on Canada's schedule, you'd be buried. I mean, she's cured now, but
England has the same thing.
England has the same thing. Did a story, what was it, 6 months ago, England, a guy went in to get Botox put in his shoulder because he's got a bad shoulder. So instead of them fixing it, they're going to treat it with a neurotoxin because that's cheaper and easier than a fix. But they mixed up the charge and circumcised this. He was 70.
They circumcised him.
Yeah, shalom. Mazel tov. You know, at 70. I'm sure his wife didn't care then, if there was a cultural issue between them on that. But yeah. And so he left, his shoulder hurt and other parts of him.
Well,
but where it's a government system,
yeah,
your recourse is totally different too.
exactly. After investment banking, I fiddled around in different things and just explored different things because I could. In the last 15 years of my career, I worked down at Mountain West Medical Center.
Pull that right up close to you.
I worked at Mountain West Medical Center. And a number of years ago, the county owned the hospital that's now the Haunted Hospital up here.
Mm-hmm. That's where I was born.
Okay. And it kept going into bankruptcy. And it finally got to the point they said, we're going to have to close the facility. And that really terrified me because, again, years ago, and this is a personal story, I was chasing a power deal down in southern Utah. There was myself and a guy from Goldman Sachs, and we had driven down. And my wife had just delivered twins, and there were complications, and she had been in the hospital for 2 months with some serious complications. She finally made it home. And we drove from, Louvain, Utah. It was a municipal power system we were chasing. They were looking to build basically the IPP power plant, which was a nice piece of cash. And I drove down. And the meeting went late. It got over at 10:30. We hadn't had dinner, and we leave, and the other guy's name was Ed Burdett. He was from San Francisco with Goldman Sachs. And he says, I'm going to drive. And I said, no, you're not. It's my car. He says, I'm going to drive. I said, threw the keys. I said, you go ahead and drive. We're from Louvain, Utah, all the way up to Salt Lake City. He drove 110 miles an hour. 11 o'clock at night.
That's fast.
I'm just waiting for the lights to come on. Didn't happen. We wheel off the freeway, pull into the Marriott Hotel, grab his bag, I'll see you in the morning, and left. I thought, if he can do it, I can do that. So I drove that fast back to Tooele. I walked into the house, and I sat down on the edge of the bed, taking my shoe off, and Carrie says, I think I'm hemorrhaging. I thought, so I pulled back the covers, and your body makes a depression in the bed. She had blood up the side of her body all the way down.
Just pooled right there. Oh.
I called 911, got an ambulance on the way. I called her doctor, said, you better send a life flight to Tooele.
Pull the mic real close.
You better send a life flight to Tooele. And he did. The ambulance arrived shortly thereafter. They just brought in the gurney and just literally picked her up, strapped her, held her up like this, and ran out the door of the ambulance.
Just ran her to the ambulance, to the life flight, to...
Yeah, and we lived down on that side of Tooele. And they went first south, and I was doing 70, and I could not catch the ambulance. So I got up there, and I go in, and they have compression pants on Chariot all the way up to here. And they're taking IVs, just going like this to keep fluid in her body and trying to keep everything above her lungs and her heart and her brain. Life Flight to Salt Lake, and she spent 3 months in the hospital.
Mm.
And I was not a fan of healthcare in Tooele County at the time, but they saved my wife's life. So when they talked about going bankrupt, they said, we can't allow that to happen.
Well, yeah, you didn't want to lose the main medical.
Yeah.
I mean, they were an intermediate that kept your wife alive before she got to the bigger systems, of course,
As
yeah.
bad as they were, they saved lives. So working with the county commissioner, we put together a sale to sell a hospital, a group called Community Health Systems. And I worked with them on that a little bit, and afterwards, I was asked if I wanted to go to work for CHS. They said, where? We'll come back to Tennessee. I didn't leave anything in Tennessee, guys. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I ended up going to work for the hospital as their HR director. And in that process, we brought in all new nurses, new doctors, and built a new hospital down where it is now. And part of my job was to hire physicians. We were talking about education. And physicians manage the clinic and other things. They put together the yearly budget. Anyway, it was really interesting to talk to physicians coming out of school. They came out, depending on their what they were doing, a surgeon, they came out $600,000 in debt as a surgeon. And we'd have to work out a way to pay that off because, doctors are getting paid, we're getting paid less and less as time went on. A lot of doctors are leaving the profession.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so I was with doctors, and we could have almost all the doctors here in the valley now. It was really an eye-opener. And right now, hospitals are struggling. Their bread and butter are surgeries. With COVID, surgeries are almost
They killed all elective surgeries for what, 2 months?
It's still going on.
Which closed hospitals down. I mean, shut hospitals down.
Yeah. And so
and those are things you just can't rebound back.
Right.
You know.
There are definitely services you don't want to lose. I mean, the military doesn't make money, but you're going to throw money at it just to keep it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That's another thing I would like to argue against as well, but it's another show. I'm way out there.
No,
Kooky.
that's fine. I'm off track too. I apologize.
Yeah. No, what's your thoughts on certificates of need for medical, for doctors and hospitals and clinics?
Tell me what that is.
It's
running back in my brain, but my mind's going.
It's where government and medical groups get together to decide the population of how many hospitals are there if a new hospital can be opened up.
Okay, yeah.
Because I think that eliminates some of the free market competition.
It does. It absolutely does. It does. There's no doubt about it. And some hospitals are better than others. That's just a fact.
They are. I mean, would Tooele be serviced better if there were two competing hospitals in it? Maybe not the size the one is, but two, half the size.
I have reason to believe that you'll see another hospital here in the next 5 years.
I think so too. We're growing. Grantsville is exploding.
Grantsville's crazy.
And it's exploding north beyond Hollywood and all that, all those trees, and then it's exploding south
and west.
Yeah, and I grew up there, spent my whole life there, and I took a ride on the north side of town 2 years ago, and it shocked me, all these new houses that, Hollywood and Vegas Street down there that run across from Burmester out west. There's houses out beyond that, but there was always a long grove of Russian olives there that hid it. And it's almost surreal when you come through those Russian olives on whichever windy road they choose.
Right.
And there's a new subdivision that's bigger than Anderson Ranch. It's, it was shocking.
Well, it's funny. My district is basically Tooele, Pine Canyon, part of Stansbury. But my perspective is I represent the county. I work with Mayor Marshall in Grantsville and Mayor of Wendover, Stockton, Tooele, the county commissioners. That's my purview.
Mm-hmm.
It's Tooele County. And so once a month, let's go out and go for a ride to see how things are growing. Lake Point is bizarre.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of sell-offs there. They're
Yeah.
building a lot of.
Grantsville is growing, it's exploding.
Yeah, don't turn your back. Grantsville will be twice the size when you turn back around.
No,
It's-
absolutely. I'm amazed.
And especially the prices that they want for stuff out there is with that much growth. But it's good.
Yeah.
It's good to see the push for housing to come back. That's a healthy sign in the economy.
It is. The one thing we need, though, is we need industry.
Oh yes.
There's an old, it's a fact that housing never pays its own way.
Nope.
For every $100 in taxes that's paid on the house, there's $50 more services provided than
Mhm.
they're paying. And that's where you have to have your Walmarts, or your storage depots, manufacturing, whatever else the case may be, to make up the difference. We don't have that.
Yeah, pull the mic in real close. Yeah. Now with this inland port, is there any push to get some of that brought out west? I know when we talked to Milne, he talked that was something he would like to look at.
No, it's something I'm exploring very, very aggressively. We have all the infrastructure. We have the Mid-Valley Highway now.
We've got
Which was-
UP that we got
UP.
the railroad right there that will go 40 miles between spurs. So we got plenty of room to throw stuff in.
Right. When I was talking, I've been involved in that for a long time, talking to different industries, I said, okay, we need to be 8 miles from the freeway. We need a straight shot.
Mm-hmm.
What's your traffic light like at rush hour? Well, they did studies and says, that doesn't work for us. If there's a traffic accident, we're shut down. We can't do that. And so that was one of the big reasons for Mid-Valley Highway, is to alleviate that problem
Mm-hmm.
and open up the middle of the valley for that type of development.
Oh yeah, you could have industry depot go from the Army depot straight on through.
Exactly.
I mean, I would like to see something like that happen. I would like to see more industry and more competition for jobs out here as well.
We have so much to offer. We have all of the infrastructure for it.
Mhm.
Rail, road, power, water is.
People.
Do we have the water?
Yes.
Grantsville's not doing bad on water.
Right now,
Tooele, I think, in the county is the municipality that hurts for water the most.
right now in this valley, there's unappropriated water rights that are not being utilized, and they're pretty significant. But they're owned by the federal government, or the federal government has those rights right now. But under state law, if they're not utilized, the state can take those rights back and then reallocate them.
How hard's that fight to take something back from the feds?
It's going to be difficult, but I think
Do you have to roll out the Constitution and show them the 10th Amendment, and then they say, well, we've never seen that before? And then you say, look, it's just under the other 9 that are the other most important things. And they say, well, we always thought it was whited out. I understand the parchment's kind of yellowish, but our whiteout is,
Yeah. Exactly. But so that's one option. The other option is, as I talked about earlier, is the Bear River project. Is we need to participate in that project.
I'm out at Cargill, and I know that's a big big hope for us, is that Tooele County gets pushed in onto that. It'll really help our salt production out there.
We already are. And speaking of that, I'm concerned about the Great Salt Lake.
Uh-huh.
We've over-allocated water resources, and the lake continues to dry up. And if it gets any drier, it's going to have a very serious environmental impact on our state.
Mm-hmm.
You look at all the different materials in the lake, the chemicals, things like that, like boron, all the heavy metals and salts. That could be a disaster for the entire Wasatch Front.
It could.
Now, if the lake dries up, it exposes that as dust, or is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Well, it's been trapping heavy metals for thousands of years now.
Yeah, exactly. Before I was mayor, I put myself through school as a chemist. I worked out at National Lead, or whatever it is now, MagCorp. And so I know it's in the brine.
Mm-hmm.
And boron is a red-colored chemical that'll eat right to your hand. and that's one of the properties in the lake. And there are different properties, but just the dust alone would be hell on earth. And so,
Yeah, if it dries up, that's where the state would have to, I don't know, have a, I guess, firefighting aircraft fly over as much of it as they could and wet it all the time, because the dust would be an issue.
Yeah. And then if you look at, right now the lake produces it's a $3 billion a year industry.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a big economic incentive.
Well, you got Magcor, the only place on Earth that produces magnesium of that value.
Yeah.
ATK closed down. You've got 3 major salt plants,
Mhm.
and it's the cheapest salt in the United States.
Right.
I mean, by leaps and bounds, the cheapest. And part of that is because all other salt areas are in union areas, and the unions are wrecking them. We are the cheapest salt. We're it. When we send out more salt than, I mean, we send salt to other salt plants to sell.
Absolutely. And so, the environmental issues are a huge concern as well. And I served on that committee that addresses those things. And I chaired it at one point in time, but, I chair one committee at a time.
Yeah.
But so there's a lot of issues we need to be aware of and be concerned with.
So if I went and got a soil sample out of the ground and shot it with like an X-ray gun, I'd probably find a lot of boron in it, huh?
Just in the water in the Great Salt Lake, yeah. What we would do is they would bring in the water and concentrate it in ponds to a certain level of solids. They'd then bring it in and they'd put it through, it's like big dryers that come out as a white flaky material.
Mm-hmm.
We would then analyze it, and you'd analyze the various components of the chemicals in that. And that way they'd be able to know what they had to put in their furnaces or electric cells to generate the magnesium they wanted. And one of the byproducts was boron. And we'd have to assay the boron, and you'd have to be very careful. Get on your hand, it just burns like the devil.
And if it's in the dust, it'll burn your lungs.
Yeah. And in the chlorine, one time at Magcor, we were in the lab. The lab was down by the plant, and we kept getting more and more chlorine. And we thought, we need to get out of here. Something's wrong. So we ran out the back door right into where the break was in the chlorine line. And it knocked me right to my knees. Luckily, the other guys drug me back in the lab, but that was a treat, too.
They hospitalized you for a while, didn't
They
it?
did.
I had a buddy who worked out there, and I remember visiting him at the hospital. He got hit in the face with chlorine, and down he went.
Yeah.
I was chased by a chlorine cloud once where I worked over in the proving grounds. It was interesting.
That'd be scary. By the way, thank you for your service.
Oh, thank him too. He was in the Army. I was just in the Air Force.
My son's in the Air Force. He's last 10 years, he's been activated 5 different times.
Yep. I think I got 6 deployments under my belt before I retired.
Yeah. He has his 20 years, and I think he's going to re-up though.
Mhm.
He's on a CCAT team.
Oh yeah, I served with a lot of Sea-Cats. I was Aerovac for 9.5 years.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
good people.
Yeah, they are. Good kid. I couldn't do what he does.
Is he active duty?
He just got back from Afghanistan about 2 months ago.
As an active duty or guardsman?
Active duty.
Active duty. Okay.
He's been activated 5 times full, as regular Air Force in the last 7 years, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Kuwait, Iraq, Afghanistan. So he's been through all of the...
Yep. Yeah, you go everywhere as a flight medic or CCAT nurse or doctor. Everything that requires medical attention you have to attend to.
Yeah, it was interesting. When President Trump was over there, and he went over, stayed at the air base in Afghanistan, Steve's team was his medical backup team. And they didn't go to the meetings or anything. They had to stay on the plane and have the engines going and everything else in case something happened. They could evacuate him and get him out.
Be ready to go with a couple Big Macs to recharge him.
Yep.
Probably more than a couple.
Yeah. Well, that's a side note. That's a bad joke.
No, I thought it was funny, actually.
Yeah. Yeah,
Are you a Trump fan?
I tolerate him.
Yeah,
He drives me crazy. I agree with some of the things he's done, but when he opens his mouth, I just go, "Oh, just don't say anything."
See, that's the part I like.
Really.
Yeah, I like the everyman. I like the crass and the getting him riled up. But I see politics as a football game, because I don't see a lot of successes in government. Okay, I don't see any successes in government. I see a lot of failures, and at the worst, graft and corruption, but at the best, just novice failures. I think as a species, we're not designed to structure ourselves into this larger groups. I think if government's kept small, it can work. Where I think the head of the government needs to be able to go out and shake the hand of everyone and kiss all the babies. But when you throw it into 360 or almost 400 million people and try to figure that out, and then the president's just a fall guy figurehead anyway.
He is.
Which he's supposed to be. But everyone lays so much value on that position, which what they forget that does is that corrupts that position to where that position then carries that power because you've given it that power. And then you're leaving one man, I don't care who it is, you're leaving one man with that much power to make or break a system. Like they're blaming him for COVID. That's got to be done. I think more than just on a state level, that's got to be done on a city level, on a municipality level, not on even a state level. I think the state's too much to have the governor decide, looking out his window at Salt Lake, what needs to happen in Delta is ridiculous.
We changed that today. I don't know if you saw the news or not.
Did you?
Yeah. Legislature they had a revolt, basically. There's a resolution in process to restrict his powers.
Good, as it should. Look at what they've done in you got Pennsylvania, Michigan, New York, all those states. Their governors have made all these. They become little mini tyrants and wrecked their states. I mean.
Right.
Is New York and California going to recover from this? This might be the death knell for those two states.
I believe it is.
And those are our two. California, 25 years ago, was the 5th largest economy in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And now,
if Biden gets in, though, he can replenish their coffers.
Oh, he can, but at what cost?
He will.
But that doesn't mean the businesses are going to come running back. California was, 25 years ago, the 5th biggest economy in the world. California only had 5 nations that beat it.
Yeah.
Not 5 other states.
No, it's 5 nations.
5 nations beat it. And 10 years ago, it was 20 or the 25th?
Something like that.
And it's had 34,000 businesses leave last year, and they don't know how many this year.
Yeah, people are leaving in droves.
34,000 businesses left.
That's why our home values are going exponentially up. If you have,
but that's fine.
That's where they're all coming from.
I want you to just picture that. That's 34. California. If you're living in California, that's something to really think about. That is a punch to the gut from Mike Tyson. That's huge. 34,000 business. Tesla gone, Nissan gone, Toyota gone.
Now Tesla, did they actually pick up and leave, or
Tesla's
was it just a threat?
Nope, they're going to Texas.
So it's going to happen.
Yeah.
If you think about the jobs involved with that, each business, let's say they have 10 jobs.
And the jobs up the line of other businesses and businesses that supply them. Like here in Utah, we got up north, they build airbags, right?
Mm-hmm.
That supply those airbags, I think, go into Mazda, Ford, some Dodge, whatever.
Yeah.
Right? They supply that. But what if, say, one of those companies they supply goes under?
Exactly.
That business takes a hit. So we got a whole bunch of people up in Tremont and now going, what do I do for work now?
Mm-hmm.
California is getting wrecked.
Well, that makes sense, though. I mean, the taxes that they charge, I don't know why the businesses have stayed there this long anyway. It doesn't make sense to me.
It's Harfier and Newsom, too. coming out and saying when you eat a sandwich on the street, you got to pull your mask up after every bite.
Is that what they said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're in a restaurant, you have to go like this. Put your mask down, take a bite, put your mask up, take a bite.
So I
You
guess
gotta-
that actually leads me into a question that I was posed. Jeff Saunders wanted me to go into the China virus. So, from your perspective, do you think that the government should be telling people that they need to wear a mask, or should it be a private citizen's individual decision mixed with some sort of free market decision from businesses? What's your perspective on the mask wearing?
You know, I have mixed feelings. I'm fine running a business. I have no problem with that. If I go to a social gathering with my family, I'm not going to wear a mask. If I go to a social gathering where there's a bunch of people and I don't know who they are, I'll probably wear a mask.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the big things about, you know, what happened today with the revision of what the governor's doing. It's not going to be more down to the local health authorities to make those decisions on how to manage the COVID situation. If I'm outside, if I'm outside preparing a sign, I'm not going to wear a mask. But if I'm going into a grocery store, I'll wear a mask as a courtesy to somebody else. And I think that's okay.
But if a mandate to wear a mask comes across your desk for a vote, would you do it?
No.
Okay.
No. Again, it's got to be common sense, you know. I guess it's the old adage: do unto others, you have them do unto you.
Mm-hmm.
We all have individual liberties, and again, you have to apply common sense to the situation. I say, this is the solution, because it's not. Look at the college campuses right now. BYU, the kids go out and have parties to get COVID, to get it over with.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of stupid.
And, well, they're not in a hazard group. All you've got to do is don't go hang out with your grandparents after.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, my grandma, when this first kicked off, I called my grandma. She's 90 years old, and I says, well, I'd like to come see you. She just had a medical issue, but I don't want to, I don't want to.
Mhm.
And she said, I'd rather see you and catch it than not see you and live an extra however long.
I feel the same way.
And I was like, all right, she has spoken. She's 90. I'm going to go see her.
I have 17 grandkids,
Yeah.
and if I die, I'd rather see them before I died.
You don't want to miss out on
No,
that.
That's what I live for, is my grandkids, to be honest.
Well, I had another question come in on this because they couldn't make a comment.
Okay.
So Laura asks, my phone is being stupid, humna, but is there a chance of increasing resources for the homeless out in Tooele? Has there been a study on the percent of homeless out here, and then is there any kind of look at that going on right now?
There has been studies clear back to when I was mayor, all those many years ago. There were studies. It's been a problem, and it's a tragedy. They're kids that are homeless.
Am I allowed to live in a trailer? Like if I buy a trailer, the kind you pull behind a truck,
You mean like
and I park it on a plot
maybe
of
not a
land.
horse trailer, but one of those enclosed 35-footers?
Because if I remember right, I thought I heard Milne say something at a county meeting saying that there was like a 30-day limit you could live in something like that, and I'm thinking, why? But maybe I'm thinking about it wrong, and I misheard something. But is there rules that prevent people from living in those kind of shelters?
I would think not, if they had the ability to manage their waste. If you could do that, I don't see any reason why you couldn't, unless it was in somebody's back. If it was
Well, he was in the Air
Against his
Force.
rights.
It's got to be a gold-seated toilet. I was in the Army. I just need my e-tool. I can manage my waste.
I've
We're
lived in the
squared
back
away.
of vans before. I mean,
Well, and that is a question, that tiny house, tiny home movement that's big.
Right.
What's Utah's, I've never looked into it. Do we know what Utah's, off the top of your head, what Utah's regulations on that is? Or
It's city by city, county by county.
okay, so it goes more on the
Yeah,
municipal
it's a municipal
side.
level issue.
Okay.
But almost a while back, we were talking about trying to acquire what used to be the old Allen Lids store.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh,
The scratch and dent over there
yeah,
by the old bank that's now...
yeah, a tile company or
Yeah.
something.
I heard East High, or no, what's that high, or the elementary school in Grand East Elementary? Is that the one over there off of
10th North.
is it 10th North? It's all where all the streets are named after trees. I said East, but I heard that has closed down and they're making part of that into maybe not just a homeless shelter, but kind of a resource center for homeless. I heard.
I've not heard that. It may be. I have not.
I heard that through the United Way, I think, once, and I'd like to know more about that. If that's something, that's something I think I would like to see more. Just regular civilians throw their hat into the ring. Maybe the idea is not to beg government not to point guns and rob you more, but to get involved in your own private way to where the government doesn't even know about it.
Well, so what I was looking to do is, if we could acquire that for some reasonable price, and if the county could come up with funds to manage it or operate it, that's what I was looking at. But it never materialized.
I know. I myself.
We have a major problem. We really do.
I would like
Yeah.
to see more free permissions for the population if they want to go out into the mountains and put a tent up and be wilderness people.
Now, I do know, I think it's a 2 or 3 week limit in our county as far as going to campgrounds, I think.
We should do a show on that. Like, what is our permissions
But
to
then
go live without a tax-paying house?
people will just move their trailer, like honestly move their trailer to the very next campsite. Like up at Grantsville Reservoir, they've got that small camping area where it's kind of just fire pits and rocks.
Mhm.
They'll literally just pull forward and back it up on the other side of the fire pit, and they've met the
the
requirements.
legal requirement.
And I suppose if they're not polluting or being violent or anything,
Yeah,
I'm okay with it. You got another question on there. This one is from Greg Dunn. You want to read that one?
Sure.
Let's see, where's it at? Okay, how can you say that you are the voice of the people when they spoke loudly in 2018 referendums and had them overruled by the legislature so quickly? Is that pertaining to the
There's 2 referendums on the ballot.
was that the one about
Is that Proposition 2?
yeah, Prop
think.
2, the marijuana proposition?
Okay.
That's probably what he's talking
Yeah, let's
about.
address that one.
Yeah, that was a big one. That was a big
Yeah, it was. And what happened is during the process of the referendum being formed, we tried to negotiate something because the state has to, when it's all said and done, manage it.
Mm-hmm.
And the way the bill was passed made it almost impossible for us to implement what needed to be done to meet federal regulations and to assure the product was safe to use. And that's what happened. We negotiated with, I can't remember his name, Connor Boyack?
That sounds right,
I
yeah.
think it was Connor Boyack and a couple of other people when we drafted the bill that we did. And over time, we actually developed support from just about everybody involved. That's what it was. It wasn't against the initiative itself or the purpose, but we had to be able to administer it and make sure it was controlled and documented to meet some federal requirements as well as state requirements.
Is there any future plans for changes to that or something?
I'd like to see it expanded to where we have more pharmacies or more areas that can be sold from.
Mhm.
Can I grow my own and use it myself for like back pain and things like that?
If you don't tell me or don't tell law enforcement. I mean, I'm just being honest.
Just like you always could. Yeah, I'm not a user. I'm not a fan of the DABC here. I like private industry. I like private. I don't mind a law saying, look, we say the cutoff for this is 21.
Mm-hmm.
Just meet there. And I think by having state control where you can't have a store that says, look, I'm going to stay open till 10. So the guys are, well, we're going to close at 7. I don't think it makes the sale and use of that product any safer, and it adds a lot of red tape.
Sets a bad precedence too for other industries. I mean,
and I'm all about, of course I'm now, brewing my own beer and what have you, but I don't like laws that are protectionist or don't have a good point to them.
Mm-hmm.
Where there's an expenditure without a point. I don't see those as being a good law. And honestly, my honest opinion, I like what Portugal's done with their drug laws. I think we need to, at the least, decriminalize every drug and turn it over to the medical side, the medical house of our industry, to manage that. And let the criminal side deal with crimes that may be connected to those drugs. But I think that, one, we learned during Prohibition, you're not going to make it go away. It's
Right.
going to happen. You're just going to enter violence into freedom. So you're going to open up a black market, and it's going to go awry.
In the last couple of years, we actually have loosened our liquor laws.
Yes.
Some of them are so dumb, it's going, wait a minute. And, so we are becoming less conservative in that regard. I think that's a good step. Something that, be it right or wrong, that's a rather significant source of income for the state.
It is a source of income, but does it carry a cost? Does it carry
A social cost?
well, social cost and whatever else, but I mean, maybe it is an income for the state, but then you take competition out of the system, and anybody, I mean, you understand this as a banker. When you take competition out, growth, it wilts on the vine, and then you just get sour grapes.
Yeah.
Bad
wine.
Yeah, you get bad wine. Something else I'm going to make next. We'll be trying that. But they've got a new batch at Menenbach too.
Okay, but anyway, so we are moving more in that direction.
And that's good. And I think that also comes, we've had a dilution with California leaving of our population, where a lot of Utahns have left, and have been for significantly for a while. And there's been a lot of other populations come in, which has diversified our religious tenets, which that'll help. But I don't want to blame those. I don't want to blame those issues strictly on just like an LDS thing. I mean, conservatives generally like to move slow. We are a conservative state. Mm-hmm. We pretty much carry the same liquor laws that came out of the ending of Prohibition. We just carry them a little bit longer. But you go down to the county where Jack Daniels, Jim Beam, and Bullet are made, and you can't buy Jack Daniels, Jim Beam, or Bullet in that county.
it doesn't seem American.
It doesn't. It does not.
Okay. Regarding the legalization of drugs, that's not going to happen in any time in the future.
I know it's not. I just think that I think that alone has been the largest driver of
Death and destruction around the world.
Issues in our nation.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, in my
down.
wife's country, Brazil, the cartels thrive on the fact that we make drugs illegal.
Well,
when we legalize a drug, it destroys so much of those cartels and their businesses.
Well, it wasn't just the limited legalization that happened in the U.S. Didn't it do like a 45% hit on the Mexican cartels?
I
They
have
had to
no
move
idea.
to fentanyl.
That's the word. they lost 45% of their income
Interesting.
in 1 year.
Yeah.
You want to punish them? I know Obama had an idea of punishing them by ensuring that they had a flow of semi-automatic rifles, but that apparently didn't work. But when they relaxed the drug prohibition, which is what it is, when they relaxed that, it was a hit to their wallets.
Interesting.
And that's the... Anyway, so we got another question in.
Okay.
We've covered drugs, and one day it'd be nice to sit down and talk with you.
But before anyone does another talk, have you had the opportunity to have a debate with your opponent?
I have not. I'm told there's going to be one scheduled sometime in the next week or so.
Okay.
But
All
Eric Gumbrecht called and said we're scheduling a debate.
Okay.
And
All
that's
right.
the last
Okay.
I've heard.
Yeah. I should be meeting up with... I'm going to try to meet up with them tomorrow.
Okay, that'd be good.
You know, and they've got those debates going on down at the town council. But yeah, and if not, if you need help with that, we'll gladly set it up and host it.
I'd gladly do that. You know,
Do you enjoy it? Do you enjoy the debates?
I think it'd be fun.
Right. So I've noticed like some candidates they avoid it like the plague, and then other ones they just like to draw their sword and charge right into the battle. So it's always interesting to kind of like see where people sit with that, because I have some weird sick fascination with debates myself. So
Yeah.
Well, I'm not. You know, I've never drawn a sword in a debate. I may have said a few bad words on the House floor, but you know, for the most part, I try to be civil. And there are times on the House floor someone will say the stupidest thing. You go, really? And I'll say something I probably shouldn't say. And the speaker goes, but no, I think civil debates should be about debates, not attacking one another. State your positions and explain why you believe or feel the way you do.
the sword draw was figurative, not
No, I know what you mean.
Okay.
But I'm talking about the Trump debate with.
Oh yeah, that was sad.
That was so
That was a
disgusting.
goal. He was trying to make him fold. He was trying to make...
That was a waste of time.
One thing I appreciate about Trump is for never being a politician, he acts like he's been a career politician. Everything he does is a maneuver, and he came out hard in that debate to try to get Biden to
try to rattle him.
to make a lot of mistakes. He wanted to knock him out in the first debate.
Right.
It didn't happen. Biden came out fairly strong, and so I think that hurt Trump's overall message.
It did.
Neither of them are strong candidates. It seems like modern United States politics are, when you do concrete and the shovel has that crusty left the next morning
Mhm.
that you got to hammer off, that's what we run for federal politics anymore.
Seems that way.
You know, nothing good. You know, last go around we had Clinton, and I don't know. But anyways, we got another one.
Okay, great.
Greg Dunn is asking, he says, and 3 Medicaid. Was that the other referendum?
Yeah.
What was involved with that Medicaid referendum?
I don't remember all the particulars, but it's what happened is Medicaid is the fastest growing part of our budget.
It's getting huge.
It is, and it's going exponentially. I don't remember all the particulars, but the way it was drafted, it would have taken a huge percent of our budget from everywhere else.
In other words, we just couldn't afford it.
Exactly.
You can't buy something you can't afford. I get that. And healthcare, especially.
And but we are concerned about every person in Utah having health care.
So what's the plan to get more doctors in Utah to do more medical procedures for more people? Do we have a plan, or is it kind of just like kick the can down the road? Or
It's a national crisis. I have doctors that, right now hospitals are employing doctors, which they had never done before about 10 years ago. I just unheard of.
to employ the doctors?
Yeah.
So the doctors were always kind of contractors before that?
They were independent contractors, yeah. They would go out and set up their own business and manage it, pay all of their costs, and live off what they killed.
And then the hospital just kind of provided the theater for them to work
theater
in.
for them to operate in, and then took, proceeds from the operations and the services provided to get the operations done, or whatever the case may be. Right now, we have a nursing shortage. We have fewer people going into medicine because you come out with $600,000 in debt. You have to start a practice from scratch, and it takes typically 2 to 3 years to build a full practice. Or you do that, you have to pay for your MAs, your office, your overhead. Liability insurance is through the roof. That's just outrageous. Premiums are sometimes $100,000, $200,000 a year just for insurance, malpractice insurance. And so a lot of people say, why would I become a doctor? I got to be an engineer. I'm not on call. I have to worry about my patients making hospital rounds. I can make $150,000 doing this. I have, $600,000 in debt from a surgeon. I don't have, I have to worry about my overhead. I can actually have a life.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. It's a lot to think about. Our medical system causes me a lot of pause. You look at the response during COVID of some other nations where, let's take for instance Spain.
Mm-hmm.
Spain has an elderly population, but remember, granted, putting everybody on a ventilator was not a good idea, but that was the initial response worldwide. And Spain couldn't get enough ventilators. But they're a socialized system, and in a socialized market, just like with roads, you don't have elasticity in the dreams. Where in a capitalist market, you can be elastic.
Right.
Where you can turn around and say, we need more ventilators. How do we make this happen? Hospitals can do that alone. It doesn't have to be done through government edict, or they don't have to rob Peter to pay Paul. They can just figure that out. We can add $10 to everybody's overall bill for the next 5 years to pay off this expenditure that we'll get on loan today.
Right.
And whereas in a socialized medicine, you can't be dynamic with that. And maybe, I don't know, under FDR, when he froze the wages, that's when insurance started to be an offering through jobs. And I think maybe that's a haunting that is hurting us, where they used to run medical a little differently through Rotary clubs or different organizations. And maybe that's been an overall harm.
I think if it's $600,000 to become a doctor,
well, that's got to be
part.
Came out of school, done a fellowship, well qualified. He'd racked up $600,000 in debt.
That's insane.
What we did, we said, okay, we will pay a substantial amount of that debt, but you have to contract a workforce for X number of years.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the only way you could afford it. And yet we needed that physician.
And that's the only way the hospital could afford it.
Yeah, we needed that surgeon to produce revenue for the hospital for things we weren't doing that there was a demand for.
Couldn't we reach out to other countries and say, hey, we want your doctors?
Well, you've got to cut through certificates of need, first of all, because the United States, as a nation, and then each state and everywhere falls under a certificate of need. They're only allowed to allow so many doctors into the medical profession every year. And I don't know, what is the certifications as far as the schooling requirements?
Yeah, depends. The schooling requirements are different. We do bring in foreign doctors all the time.
Well, Panama was a foreign country, and we went down and rescued our kids down there going to medical school. They were U.S. students in a...
Yeah.
Well, that would make sense. I mean, we export medical tourism. Maybe we could also state-sponsor medical training in other countries as long as they can meet the standards.
Yeah, and that's the criteria. There's a lot of doctors in other countries don't have the same standards we do to meet the medical requirements to practice in the U.S. But a lot of countries, India, for example, produces incredibly good physicians.
Mm-hmm.
I had a guy here that his name is Dr. Chakravarthi, brilliant pulmonologist, and he's currently at the U. But he went back to Harvard and did a fellowship, and so we do that. Back in the early mid-'90s, we were recruiting nurses out of the Philippines because we didn't have enough nurses.
We're still doing nurses out of the Philippines today.
Yeah, and we're still trying to make up for that. And again, Tooele Tech has a program that'll create an LPN and go over to Utah State here in Tooele and become an RN. But there's still a huge demand for nurses.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, I had a call this morning where we talked about the COVID-19 and the governor's new orders and what was going to happen. And we had the president of the Utah Hospital Association on the line with us. And he talked about the burnout that's occurring with our people that are staffing the intensive care units. They're working 12-hour shifts in PPE. It's hot, and it's just we're approaching a point of crisis.
I can speak a little bit of knowledge towards the training to become a medical professional. For 9.5 years, I was an aeromedic, an enlisted aeromedic. So when I'm not in the Air Force being an aeromedic, I'm the equivalent of not even an LPN on the civilian side. So, they'll train you to do IVs and ET tubes and everything as the enlisted guy for the military. Then you step out into the civilian market and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, but you're not qualified. But I can guarantee you that our medical staff in the military that are combat medics and whatnot, they're very qualified.
Absolutely.
And it's almost kind of insulting to hear government not try to say, you know what, maybe there's a bridge we can gap there. Maybe there's...
well, that's where the physician assistant came from. Came from medics from Vietnam.
Well, I'm saying if there's a nurse shortage or something like that, maybe extend the medical training to that next test so that our enlisted force can come out with something that's equivalent to something more than just a bedpan commando in a hospital. And you might be able to bridge a lot of that employment gap utilizing our military skilled labor that is ready to transition.
I agree.
And I think we're not considering that as a government, and we should take a closer look at that. I know there are certain types of EMTs that are trained in I think a 3-month school. They call them EDEMTs, and they put them out in remote areas in these villages in other countries, and they have a communication line to a physician back in the States. And basically, this enlisted guy, who's nothing more than a bedpan commando, is the doctor for this little civilization. And this person's very well educated. It's hard to pass this EDMT course. But he comes back. He comes back into the civilian market of America. And he's a bedpan commando. And I really think, if we really want to solve this medical crisis, it can't be as hard as people are making it sound. Especially when there's all these resources here in our enlisted forces in the military that are quite capable of bridging a lot of these employment gaps. That's just my soapbox there from my experience as a medical professional in the military.
You was an Air Force nurse. I went through Army nurses, and they weren't quite as gentle. Let's keep our...
No, I agree with your premise. My son, he's on a CCAT team. His full-time job is at the VA. He's over 3 different departments.
Is he a doctor, respiratory tech, or a nurse?
Respiratory therapist.
Okay.
He manages respiratory departments, sleep, and something else.
Mm-hmm.
But, you got to start. Went into the Air Force.
The Air Force actually trained him as respiratory.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably where I should have went, was respiratory therapist instead of medic.
Yeah.
But Yeah, there's one example of being able to step right out into the civilian world from the medical field is respiratory
The Medicare skill
therapy.
sets has to be pretty darn good. I mean, I know what medics do,
Mhm.
and it's a lot more than most nurses do.
Yeah.
And it's in a lot of different conditions, a lot more difficult conditions. So, I agree. We need to do a lot with our healthcare system. You know, right now costs are too high, and there are reasons for that, but they're just dumb reasons.
Is that cost a lot of? Well, there's a lot of government forces the hospitals to manage this thing, so the hospital has to recoup their expenditure, so they spread that out across here.
We do.
There's a lot of that. There's the certificate of need where it's limited to get competition in there.
Mm-hmm.
There's also, granted with pharmaceuticals, yes, we pay more than any other nation, but Viagra didn't come from Germany. The new statins aren't coming from Europe. It's all invented here.
Exactly.
Everything is made here. And so how can we, it'd be nice if we could convince the pharmaceutical companies to try to figure out how to spread that cost out. I mean, there is a huge cost and a huge sacrifice. I know that in one of my wacky shows I watched, an economist said if we went with if we went to just the United States went to a single payer healthcare system with forced pharmaceutical prices, he says we probably wouldn't see a new drug come out except maybe once every 4 or 5 years.
Exactly. The problem we need to do.
Where right now we get one a month.
Yeah, and we pay for it.
Yeah,
We pay for all the overhead, and then the profits come from overseas and elsewhere where they sell it for a cheaper price.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow we need to make it an even playing field.
We got to figure that out, and I don't know how to figure that out. Yeah, I don't know how to do that. I mean, the initial knee-jerk reaction, even to an anarchist like myself, is to say, "Well, the government take over the pharmaceutical companies and then adjust it that way." But that's obviously going to be the wrong answer. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know how you could answer that.
I think we need more free enterprise. So if I can go to Mexico right now, the state health PEHP, will pay people to go to Mexico to buy their drugs and fly them down
Oh, I'm sure.
because it's cheaper to do that than to buy them here, and it's cheaper for the person that's getting the drugs.
Maybe open it up so that we have across national borders pharmaceuticals, where
Exactly.
maybe I get onto a Filipino pharmaceutical, or or you go like in medical outcomes and overall happiness. I think Singapore ranks number one in the world, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Singapore is a tyrannical, fascistic monarchy, and I mean fascistic in the original means of the term, not the new college-educated meaning. And what it meant when it was invented by Mussolini was, but Singapore has a strictly managed system. But everyone that's looking to Singapore, you might want to take a step back because it's illegal to be homosexual in Singapore. Maybe I shouldn't say illegal. As long as they don't see you do it, you're fine.
Yeah, but if you get caught,
You get caught.
you get caned or whatever else.
Yeah, you get time in Singapore. They don't play around over there.
Right.
Very strict, but their health outcomes are relatively high, state-controlled healthcare system. But of course, everything else is state-controlled. They're definitely they live under a fascist economic system.
I think one thing that would help is right now each insurance providers are designated by state where they can practice.
Mm-hmm.
Eliminate that. Open up the free market that way.
What does that mean? I'm confused when people say that.
Okay. So if you're a healthcare provider, you may be able to provide that healthcare product in Utah and nowhere else. And if you have a provider in Colorado, they may not be able to provide your care in Utah.
And the reason for that is just government legislature?
Yeah, just government.
Between state government, right?
Yeah, I think it's the feds, actually, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Commerce Clause, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's something with the Commerce
Now,
Clause.
Trump actually got some of that relieved, didn't he?
He did a little bit, but not enough.
And I like what he got relieved on drugs. The certificate to try.
Right. You know, and if we could open up our borders with Canada and be able to order drugs from Canada.
Canada, Mexico. Yeah.
It would, that's a big issue that the state's looking at right now is how can we reduce those prices of care? Because it's becoming to the point it's exorbitant. Cost of insurance, the cost of prescriptions. A lot of people say, do I eat or do I get my medication?
Yeah.
That's
People are going to have
right.
to use Bitcoin to buy medicine pretty soon.
Yeah, that's just not right.
Is there pharmacies that take Bitcoin?
Oh, I'm sure there are. They're on the black market or somehow.
That'd
Oh,
be
well,
my guess.
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a question. Well, it sounds like you've got your hands in a overall pot on what's going on in our house.
I have to.
Yeah, you've got an idea. You've got the budget laid out. I like that you're managing roads, even though under my political purview, roads can be built by anyone, But I am a serious. I'm an anarcho-capitalist.
That's okay.
My political leanings are that way, but that it isn't going to happen anytime soon. So I've got to live within what I've got.
Well, we need to reform it.
We do. I really want to take a look at. Now, granted, I know things that happen on the Utah state level isn't going to help the big strife going on now. That's strife in Democrat-controlled cities that has kind of been washed down the river to a lot of special interest, unions and what have you. And so we can't help that. But, so that's not an argument to bring here, but I hope Utah maintains kind of the ideas of the free market. And I like you guys standing up to the governor. I know Utah's governor always seems to look at Colorado and California and get teary-eyed and think, I could be that, special on the national stage.
The reason I laughed is the governor, we get along for the most part
Oh,
pretty well.
Yeah.
But we've had our toe-to-toe arguments.
Oh, I believe it.
And they...
I look at some of the things that guy says and does.
Yeah. Well, Utah's governor has always looked at, if I do this, I'll get my name on the stage. I like Wyoming's governor. I don't know who it is. That's why I like him. Or her. It might be her. Wyoming may have an animal governor. I don't know. I have never heard the name, seen them on TV.
I couldn't tell you it is. If my life depended on it, I couldn't tell you.
That means the governor's doing it right.
Yeah. Just one other thing I may want to talk
Pull that
about.
mic up close.
One other thing I may want to conclude with. I was a legislator. I get paid $18,000 a year.
Hey.
Wow. And when I was working at the hospital, when I ran, I said, look, I need to run for legislature. He said, well, why? And I said, I don't know. And I says, well, you're awful important here. I says, here's the deal. I'll either take vacation, take my 4 weeks vacation while I'm in session for 45 days. I'll work 20 hours a week, either after I get through with my day or over the weekends. And I did that. And for 6 years, I was a negative substantial amount of money because of that. Typically on a given week, I'm in at the Capitol 2 to 3 days a week in my office, working on legislation or working with leadership to help resolve issues. That's unpaid time. So the $18,000 comes for the 45 days, and then when I'm in a committee meeting where we're actually conducting business. And so it's not, you don't get rich off of it. You don't
And
put a lot
that's
of miles
good,
on your
though.
car.
That's good. I think that shows, you want to serve.
Yeah, I read a quote a long time ago. It was simply this: public service is the price you pay for being here. I believe
I
that.
like it.
I've been very blessed throughout my life, and I feel I need to give back.
So, if you win this one, will you go again?
Why are you asking him that? He doesn't have a choice in the matter.
No, that's a relevant question. We always
It
ask
is, but-
we always ask a term limit question
Yeah.
to all our candidates. This is your term limit question. If you win this one, do you want to go again?
Let me share something with you.
It doesn't sound like he wanted to go last time.
After my last term in January, after the session, I came out and said, "Kerry, I'm done." And historically, I'd taken all my campaign signs that I could salvage and stuff like that, put them in the garage, and then 2 years later, I'd dig them out and put them back up. I threw them all away.
Oh,
And I actually
man.
felt good about it. I felt good about it.
felt free probably.
I did.
18 grand doesn't seem like enough for,
I mean,
and it shouldn't be. Granted,
yeah,
I believe if we're going to have a government, it should be a volunteer government that has outside professions.
I
And,
agree.
Mhm.
and they come in with that free market mentality, like fighting for their profession in there, which keeps professions alive. Maybe some corruption enters, but they're still, fighting.
Yeah, there is. Anyway, so I was done. 10 years was enough. 8 years of mayor, I knew 6 years in, I was done. Because city government's weird. You address the same problems. Those new people come and says, well, what about the water? What about this? They don't go back and look at their records. It's already been addressed 10 times by 10 previous administrations. So I felt I was done. And I was in a church on a Sunday. We was going to announce formally the following Monday I wasn't seeking re-election. And this sounds really dumb, but the voice says, you have to run again. I thought, well, I thought next, but you got to be beeping me. So home, I didn't tell Kerry till the next day. I said, Kerry, I'm going to run again. I said, why? He says, I have no idea. It's something I feel I need to do. So I've gone out, and historically I've financed all of my own campaigns. The campaign costs about 15 grand, and so there's that you put into it. And anyway, so I'm running again. Hadn't planned on it. I'll do whatever I need to do this for the next 2 years if I'm elected, and hopefully I'm done. 'Cause it's just odd.
It would probably be nice to take a break for a while.
Yeah, it would.
Maybe get an RV and take the wife on a nationwide drive. Or
Do you take anyone under your wing? Do you kind of like mentor someone else?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
let's say Stormy won this go around.
Okay.
Would you kind of try to grab her and walk her into your seat? Or is that a faux pas where it's a party thing?
It's a party thing. In order to have a seat on the House floor, you have to be a member, officially sworn in, and
Okay.
taken office.
Well, I mean, would you
But
take?
I'd help her with the transition, sure.
You'd help her out and give her
Yeah.
some advice. Well, you'd help Tooele out, is what you'd
Yeah,
be
that's
doing.
what it is.
Yeah.
Um,
And we talked to her. She's a nice lady.
I've
We've
seen her,
talked to
I've
you.
seen her at
You're
the chamber
nice.
luncheon a couple of days ago. She seemed like a very nice lady.
Yeah.
I've not talked to her personally, but she seems like a nice lady.
Yeah, and I think I don't know how the party politics in Utah works. We don't quite have a super majority, but we do have a strong Republican presence or a strong conservative presence.
Well, we actually have a supermajority.
Oh, do we?
There are 16 Democrats in the House out of 75 representatives.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
That's a super majority.
In the Senate, I think it's 6 out of 26.
Oh, yeah.
Do we have any
Well-
libertarians?
Some of the House members are libertarian. They say they're Republicans, but they're libertarians.
Okay.
Yeah, the most of your successful libertarians run like that,
Yeah.
even on the nationwide level. Which is a valid argument. A party's already standing. Why not join the system and then try to corrupt it from the inside. That's
Well,
all.
they don't corrupt it.
Oh, that's my choice of words.
No, I know what you're saying. It's just they have some radical, I won't say radical, they have some different ideas on how things should be done.
Mhm.
And, they voice their opinions. Sometimes they get some traction, sometimes they don't.
Yeah,
That's just
it's-
how the house works.
Yeah, it's all little bites, little, whittles back and forth. Well, it's good to hear that. I don't know. I'm sitting here, and honestly, I've met both the candidates running, and
I feel very comfortable with either one of you, to be honest with you. I mean,
Thank you.
that's a good thing. I wouldn't. I don't feel a sense of impending doom.
mhm.
Right now, the state's is consistently considered one of the best managed states in the
Oh, yeah.
nation.
Oh yeah.
And the budget snafu, that was difficult. That was horrible.
Yeah.
We had no idea. We have a incredible economist that does our projections for us. Been recognized nationally a number of times, and we have no idea. We're going to look at a worst case scenario, and that's what we're going to cut. And we did, and we rebounded very quickly compared to the other states.
Mm-hmm.
We're leading the states as far as our economy growth and things like that, as far as our budget. Still not sure what our revenues are going to look like for next year. Automobile sales are way, way down.
Mm-hmm.
Sales tax in general is up, but gasoline sales, that's interesting too. As we have more efficient cars, the receipt from gasoline sales goes like this. And that was the major way we funded roads, and now it's not doing very much in that regard, and we're looking at other sources to do that. But
Yeah, I heard. Isn't it California was looking at a mileage tax versus a gasoline tax because of electric cars showing up?
Yeah.
And maybe that's why Newsom just made the announcement after 2034 you can no longer buy a gasoline car in the great state of California.
unbelievable.
That guy is my hero. He's got to wake up in the mirror every morning and pep talk himself and high five the mirror. He is an unrestrained ass.
A lot of Kool-Aid goes down that hole.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, he's a petty tyrant, the worst kind of tyrant.
California used to be such a beautiful state. I used to go to San Francisco. I had, family that was there, and beautiful town. Now if you go, they give you a guide to show you where you can't go because people are defecating in the streets.
Oh, I watched a video. Used to be able to find it on YouTube. They took it down. The mayor of San Francisco, a lady,
That's what's that, yeah.
where she's out doing like a guided tour, like guiding people around. She's like, oh, watch out for that. And she was running serpentine down the sidewalk in front of the Capitol building around Human Duke. I was like, oh man, I must have watched that video 40 times. It was the best thing I ever saw. It was hilarious.
The sad thing is it's real.
It's real. And they've done everything to incentivize that. Granted, I don't want to see people be hard on homeless, but I think you need to figure out how to bring them back into the fold somehow.
Exactly.
And most of your homeless, and probably 75% of them, are drug addiction and mental issues.
Exactly.
So you got to figure out how to bring them in. How do you do it? And instead of California even going to the drastic measure of saying we're going to incentivize companies to hire this issue, they just went, we'll just throw money at them, and then wonder why people that can get there went there. Yeah, that's a big question. I don't know. I my answer is always try to turn to the free market as best you can.
Absolutely.
It's the one that works. You can compete in the free market.
I agree.
And hopefully, I don't know. One day maybe I should start preaching to kids and I can, fix the future, but
You're going to have to run for politics eventually, Jared.
man, I don't know.
Sorry to tell you.
There are never ways to do it. You just have to try.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm doing here. I'm trying. Everyone, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this. It was
Yeah,
great.
Doug's great. And like I said before, honestly, this coming out of the show tonight, I feel hopeful because I don't see a negative to any way this goes. I don't feel a sense of impending doom. I don't feel like someone's going to step in and try to restrict my well-being.
Absolutely not. I'm a Second Amendment guy and have been and will be.
I like it. Well, yeah, we didn't.
Did you sign the petition for the? Explain to him the petition.
So there's a petition to make Tooele County a Second Amendment sanctuary.
I'd sign that in a heartbeat.
All right. Well,
We'll get you.
We'll get it to you. Yeah, and that's a big thing. You know, we're a Second Amendment show. We like to talk guns, shoot guns, and
Protect freedom. I'm not a fan of shooting them, but I will if I have to.
Oh, I love shooting guns. I don't hope I ever have to shoot at people, but the worst habit is buying guns. I don't want to talk about my childish exploits into paying too much for the many firearms, which if the feds are listening, I lost in a boating accident the other day. It was sad, tragic, really. But I'm glad to hear that as well. And both our candidates are pro Second Amendment. Granted, as a capitalist, that's the root of my religion. I generally tend to lean more Republican. They've been the more capitalist friendly for the last 70 years. But it doesn't sound like your opponent's anti-capitalism either. So
she's a business person.
She's another business person, which is great. I feel a sense of hope. I think regardless, Tooele County is going to do well. We're in the hands of someone who knows what he's doing, and if you vote for Doug, he's got a good handle on his job, and he came here with charts and graphs and stuff, and we didn't give him enough time on him. We understand that.
It's okay. That's boring.
Yeah, that's the boring stuff.
I'm a detail guy, and again, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it.
That's true. Details are where it counts. But everyone, thanks for joining us. Remember, get out and vote. I feel pretty good. Dave?
Look us up on YouTube. YouTube's having a hard time searching us out. So if you can find us on YouTube and subscribe, that helps. Smash that like button if there's one there, I suppose. We need some more searchability.
Yes.
So
yes,
if you like what we're doing, give us a little support in searching us out on YouTube. I think we're getting shadow banned, to be honest with you. You must have said something about guns.
No, it was that 2A show we had.
Yeah.
But anyways,
thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
I like your hat. Where'd you get that?
I got this in Las Vegas. Some Indian